Hello, people of Earth. It is Wednesday night, and you know what that means. People are clamoring and asking each other the number one question that's on everybody's mind, and that is, hey, did you see this one? Hello, y'all. How's everybody doing on this fine, blustery winter's eve?
It's a wintry day
Here in
in
Toronto.
Winterland.
It's snowing hard. How's it doing over there in Haligonia? There, Cage Man.
We're super swell. We're gonna get it tomorrow, apparently.
Yeah, that's what usually happens. Tonight we are talking about the hit 1985 horror for kids.
Yeah, that's exactly how I put it.
Return to Oz.
Okay, if you want to adhere to basic opinions, you basic bitches. Just
Hey.
kidding. It's anti-bullying day. I'm sorry. I apologize.
You better
Yeah,
not bully us.
anti-bullying.
Or I'll bully you right back. Give me a lunch money, kid. But I believe our host for today
But I
is...
brought my own lunch.
Give me your lunch.
Your whole lunch, then, motherfucker.
I believe our host for tonight is Steve.
Sure. Yeah, I think that I've seen this movie probably a million times more than you guys.
It's okay. Well, yeah.
Yep.
I guess I'll tell you in my moment. What up,
Yeah,
Keldon? Welcome to the chat. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the
Hello.
chat and the show.
So this movie is a movie from 1985. It's directed by a man by the name of Walter March, Murch, I believe. Who this is the only movie he ever directed, but he is primarily an editor and sound editor and like video editor. I think he edited The Godfather and Apocalypse Now. So obviously his next step was to direct a movie for children.
Freakish nightmare. Waking fever dream
but
about a girl who
he was working
falls in a
for
swamp.
the Walt Disney Company in the 80s, and he was looking to get into directing, and he was talking to some people that he was connected with in the company, and they asked him, if you ever wanted to direct a movie, what would you want to make? And he said, I'd really love to do some sort of Oz adaptation. And their response was, well, we own the rights to all of the books, so why don't you go write that and bring it back to me?
Wasn't there? I'm not sure if it's called a contract or whatever, but like their ownership of those rights about to run out in the near future when this was made?
The copyright for the Oz books was about to run out, but also Oz in general is public domain, but they had the rights to the specific stories of the novels. So like anybody can make an Oz story, but owning the copyright had something to do with why they wanted to push it out the door. But then there's also a whole other crock of baloney that MGM owns a whole bunch of iconography from
certain specifics.
Yeah, we'll get into that during the main bulk of the discussion. But
it's not like they got themselves into a Winnie the Pooh situation where the
that killer Winnie the Pooh thing?
The rights come up and then they can just do whatever they want with it. They actually, I feel like they put some thought into this and worked around those elements as best they could. Scarecrow's still in it, Tin Man and Cowardly Lion are like kind of cameos in it.
Well, those characters are allowed to be in it in any way they want. They just can't use the iconography from the MGM movies because those characters are public domain characters. So they can still put them in there. They just can't make them look like they did in the 1930s movie.
Why the Scarecrow looks especially horrendous.
Well, the Scarecrow in this movie is actually based on the original illustrations from the book. Like he's always got a big weird smile and a crooked crown on his head. Like he almost looks like pulled out of the pages kind of thing. A lot of the characters do, to be honest. But also that poster that Kaylin has behind him is a goddamn lie. It makes it look like the Scarecrow, the Tin Man, and the Lion are all going to be on the adventure as well. No, they are not.
They're
anyway.
Statue Boys.
I don't want to get too deep into the discussion just yet. So let's start with our classic opener, which is, when did you see this movie? And that's what we'll put in our soundbite now, I guess. We've decided. What is your history with this movie? And we'll start with Kaylin.
I never get to go first.
Oh, okay, fine. We're gonna start with Jason.
I'm putting that out there because it's a weird thing where every time I'm like ready, and then I never get to go first.
I feel like you get to go first sometimes.
When I host,
Just-
sometimes I do myself first.
and you host like 10 times more than anyone else. So
It's true. That's what I get my shit in. Ladies and gentlemen and people, you know what? I saw this movie for the first time. I'm of the year 1985. I was born in 1985. This movie has been a constant in my life ever since I was a small child. Most prominently, though, I had this channel called the Family Channel. If you're a Canadian, you may remember the Family Channel.
Was that 43?
It was channel 30.
Kaylin, you got to know that channels are not specific to the universe,
Yeah.
just to your city that you live in.
It was, cable in Halifax was hilarious, but I lived in the boonies. We only had 30 channels. I know our parents were like, well, I only had 0 channels because we had the radio. But,
Oh my God.
but
Your
just
parents were all in the military, all of them? All 5 of them?
as a little anecdote about this particular channel, is why I always bring this up, is this countdown came on the channel, right? It was channel 30. It was nothing forever. We channels went up to 29. There's going to be this 30th channel. This countdown started with all these crazy, like, early 90s. This would have been probably 1992, 93. Probably 92. With all these crazy, like, swirls of, like, galaxies and universes. Clearly, like, early computer-generated.
Yeah, it was like a screensaver.
Yeah, basically. And I remember just, like, watching it for hours and watching this countdown happen for months. And then what ended up happening was it clicked over to the Sci-Fi Channel, like the American fucking Sci-Fi Channel, Transformers, other shows that were on the Sci-Fi Channel at the time. And the problem was it was no sound. There was no sound coming through. There was no sound. So that went away, and then Disney's Family Channel. It's the Disney Channel, but the Canadian version comes up. But they used to show all kinds of bangers on it. They used to show all kinds of cool stuff, like old Mickey Mouse Club, Kids Incorporated, like old Disney movies. Basically, like
Fun fact about this movie, not to interrupt you, even though I am. They had a script for not this movie, but an adaptation of The Wizard of Oz, where they were just going to take the entire cast of the Mickey Mouse Club and make them go on a Wizard of Oz quest.
That would have been fine. We'd probably be talking about that.
I feel like it would have been fine, but this movie is good. So
Kelvin,
that's the
yes,
main
you were
difference.
right. It is a horror movie, and it is from Disney. The thing that's funny is that this movie would come on all the time, and I had one of those cinematic, like, moments when I was a kid where they show I was at my, like, dad's place. I was real young. My parents were split up. I was at my aunt's place somewhere, and they showed YTV was like, we're showing The Wizard of Oz uncut, uncensored. But it was what that meant really is it was the, like, new version of it from the 90s that came out that was, like, the color was, like, more colorful or something. Just like a re-release from the 90s. Anyway, I remember seeing that and then seeing this and being like, what the fuck? What is this?
I think someone's knocking at my door. Give me 1 second.
Okay, but then I would go on to watch this movie a lot of times. And Steve's asked us on the show before and in private, what movies are, like, movies that we watch when we're sick, home from school back in the day, just comfort movies. And for me, it's a lot of TV, but you guys have answers for that. But I was thinking about it today, and I remember watching this homesick from school all the time because it was on so frequently on the
This is another chicken noodle movie. I know I say that a lot, but it was one of them because it puts me right back into that, like, nostalgic feeling of, like, being comfortable and my cottage. I'll save that for my Once Upon a Time when I watched it. Kaylin, you go next.
I'm done. I saw the movie 1,000 times.
So when you guys first suggested it, the imagery looked kind of familiar, and I couldn't tell if I had seen it or not. And then through conversation with you guys, you got there's also a cartoon like Wizard of Oz or Return to Oz version or something.
Sorry,
like that.
Kaylin, not to cut you off, even though I am. I just wanted to add to mine. There was a cartoon that was an anime done in the same style as Astro Boy and Maya the Bee that I had, lots of memorabilia from, including I remember specifically a coloring book, and I remember the TV show being really weird. But then Steve told us last week, I think, that there's like a movie as well, like an animated.
Yeah,
movie.
there's an actual movie that came out before this, I believe,
Okay.
which I assume probably inspired the cartoon show, but I don't know for sure.
Right. Sorry, Kaylin. Go ahead, buddy.
Are you? But yeah, so the Jack Pumpkinhead looked familiar, to say the least. It actually looks kind of spooky. So yeah, this movie is definitely a lot darker than the first one. But having watched it last night, I'm gonna have to say that was my first time watching it, and I gotta say I was pleasantly entertained, surprisingly entertained.
I'm glad to hear that, because it is difficult to show somebody a movie that's so old that is geared towards children and have them still enjoy it. It's not
It held
impossible.
up really well.
It's not impossible, but it is rare that you watch a movie that people love from the 80s that are kids movies that you have never seen, and then you try and watch it as an adult and you're mostly just like, what am I watching? This is no good. But yeah, are you good? Are you done with your yeah?
Take it away.
So I saw this movie. I don't really have a full formed memory of the first time I saw this movie, but it was, I think I've mentioned on the podcast before that one of my friends, his sister used to babysit us a lot when I was a kid, and she would show us movies that she loved, and she's a little bit older. I think she might be a little bit older than you guys. But this was one of those movies. It was also one of the movies that when I was a kid, we would go to my grandparents' cottage, which I have like a little brief window of memories of going there, but not too many because they sold it when I was quite young. But we would always stop at this little sort of gas station convenience store that was like no bigger than sort of like a shack. Like it was tiny, but they had this one little corner of movies. And this was one of the movies that they had on VHS. And I always wanted to rent that one, to the point that it was a point of annoyance for a point of contention for my parents. They're like, you got to rent something different. You rented this last time. And I was like, I don't care though. I want to rent this one. What's your problem, Mom? Instead, they decided to show me Ace Ventura at the age of 6. Like,
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Probably should have shown me Return to Oz again. But because of those sort of warm memories, you know, we would rent those movies mostly for like bedtime movies at the cottage, which was viewed on like a tiny television, right? You didn't have a big TV at the cottage. It was just like a little tiny tube. And if any time it was raining, I would just pop it in and just lie on the couch and watch Return to Oz. So I have this very sort of like warm connection to it, even though it did freak me out to no end. Like there are moments in this movie that as a child it scares you, but you know, I'm a spooky dude in life, and I was as a kid, and I like being scared, but I don't like being terrified. And this movie is not terrifying, but it is quite unsettling. A lot of it is quite unsettling. And
I just want to
like
interject something quickly.
Okay.
This anime that I have in my head
doesn't exist.
Does not exist.
I don't know why you kept calling it an anime. There is a cartoon show, but I don't know why you would keep referring to it as anime.
No, but the cartoon Return to Oz is from the 60s. And does have a Jack character.
Well, Jack Pumpkinhead is from the books, like the original book series.
I get there. There's an anime, or not an anime, there's a cartoon movie or something called Journey Back to Oz, and it has Jack Pumpkinhead. I don't know now what the fuck I saw as a kid, but I think what it might be is a combination of, there is a
does this qualify as a Jason's Theory corner? No,
it doesn't. It doesn't.
Okay.
This is inside my head, so it's not really a theory. It's, I think, what happened to me as a kid. There is an anime in that style that I was talking about, or close to it, that is The Wizard of Oz.
It's called Howl's Moving Castle.
No, it's a Wizard of Oz. It's called there's Journey Back to Oz, and then there's Wizard of Oz TV show from like the 90s from my research here.
That's the 90s is the one that I'm familiar with.
So what happened was I had this coloring book of Return to Oz. I specifically remember the coloring book, like from this movie, like clearly just like stuff that was put out from this movie that I had. And I thought I like meshed the two things in my head and thought that there was an anime of Return to Oz. But there's just the movie. There's an anime called
All right. Jesus Christ. You misremembered something.
There's an animated show from the 60s called Return to Oz, and it all just...
Okay. This is like a Mandela effect. It's gonna, in a couple of years, there's gonna be a TikTok with our podcast playing. It'll be like Mandela effect? Question mark.
No, just Jason's an idiot. He's too sure of things from his past without looking it up. I was like, you know what? I should look this up. I haven't looked this up.
You should probably look it up before the show.
I was looking it up while you were talking, okay? So I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I did lots of research for this.
What's up with the eggs, then?
An interesting tidbit.
Chat wants to know what's up with the eggs.
Like, why are they poisonous to the gnomes? Unexplained, but also a lot of things in Oz are not explained, so it's...
Because it's all
whatever
based on massive head wounds.
Yeah, it's the addled brain of a child who is suffering from an undiagnosed concussion from getting hit in the head during a tornado, who has psychosis and believes that her dream is real,
and then falls in a river and fucking almost dies in a swamp.
Relives it. Yeah. One of the fun things about this movie, having seen it so many times, is preparing yourself for being faced with the things that she absorbs on her way to the hospital, in the hospital, right up until she falls into the river, and then going through the movie and piecing together which imagery, which characters, which actors are being repeated throughout the movie. And I kind of like went into this for this watch really kind of aware of that, because I don't watch this movie often, but I do watch it. I have watched it more than a handful of times since I was a kid. I watched it so much as a kid, but then I'll watch it every 5-6 years or something now as an adult. The last time watching it since before this was probably about 8 years ago.
You said you had a tidbit?
Oh, right. Tidbit us.
Were you gonna say something first?
Yeah, I was just gonna talk about how much fun it is to watch this movie, having seen it a couple of times, with the sort of
kind of like Easter egg hunt.
The observant eye, yeah, where I'm like, these are the eggs, these are the Easter eggs. It's not about the chicken eggs that kill the gnomes. It's about like looking at the things that happen throughout and then seeing them crop up in the movie. Like something as simple as the head nurse taking away her lunch pail and putting it on the gurney as it's wheeled away, and then when she's in the world, she finds a lunch pail tree, and they look exactly like the lunch pails that was taken away from her.
With
and like that,
wrapped sandwiches. How do you grow wrapped sandwiches?
Listen, it's a magical world of magic.
World where everybody can do whatever they want, except for
there's a desert that turns you into sand. A deadly desert.
And also,
I read that this was the first Disney film to use the iconic Disney logo with the little kind of like starry rainbow thing going over it.
No, it's the first one that used the blue logo.
Oh, okay.
It's the first one to use the blue logo. So before this, it was, I believe, just black and white. And the like sort of like, it's like a peacock blue with the pale blue castle and the logo underneath. Yeah, it's the first one to do that. I don't know why.
And that thing that goes across the top is Tinkerbell in the front, and then she flies to the back and then flies over top and makes the like rainbow.
Well, that doesn't happen in this one. I think that's later on.
Yeah,
I think they added that. Yeah,
that probably is from
Peter Pan.
Yeah, well, yeah, but this is after Peter Pan by like a lot, right?
What?
I think that was mostly for the home VHS edition of things. Like we started adding it to the movies later. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that this movie opens in such a drastically different way than the original. We're all done our intro, yeah, I guess.
I was done my intro, and then I said some more.
Whoa! Can I interrupt you guys now?
Yes.
Sure.
Okay, that was it.
Ah, I see. Thought this was supposed to be anti-bully day.
I'm bullying
Well,
you.
you guys each got to interrupt each other, or everyone had an interruption, no?
That's true. So the movie opens with a sort of a mysterious, trilling soundtrack to a starry sky, whereas the first Wizard of Oz movie is a bombastic score that is immediately followed up by Dorothy singing about bullshit over the rainbow. And this movie also pans down onto Dorothy, except she is completely silent, staring out of the window
Because
at
she
the sky
is
while she's trying
catatonic.
She's not catatonic. She's longing for the world that is way better than the shitty world that she lives in now. She's dreaming of the world that she visited that is better than the world that she's in.
It's so crazy how like they changed the vibe of this version of Oz. Like this version of Oz obviously is like a world in ruin version of Oz, but it's so crazy that it just looks like they went out into like the rural areas of a city, like just outside of a city, and filmed, because it doesn't have the same, like Wizard of Oz was all done on crazy sets, like crazy for their era, like crazy sound stages and sets and colorful,
and like amazing backdrops and like
and
crazy
this does have matte paintings, but they're all fucking bleak and they make you feel gross. It's like
They stand out.
But for like these like bleak, gross reasons, and I love it. It's like like this version, this is like the antithesis of the first Wizard of Oz. You know, it's like these people came in, they wanted to make this movie, but they wanted it to like mean something. Like I was saying earlier, how people that like the Fantastic Four IP, they keep fucking making Fantastic Four movies that blow just to keep the IP alive. It's been the last four.
What do you mean they keep making them?
The last four movies since the 90s are just to keep, so Fox can keep the fucking IP.
There was another Fantastic Four before the one with Jessica Alba.
There's a Roger Corman one that was made in 1994 that was made specifically to keep the rights.
Like the Batgirl movie that just got made and then deleted immediately for the tax
write-off.
Well,
that was a tax write-off.
Yeah.
It's a different thing, but yeah.
But in the same vein, it's like Yui Ball going and just making shitty movies in like Germany to get the tax breaks and then make money off like garbage.
I feel
movies.
like all three of those examples are very different reasons, but all just as bad as one another.
But in the same,
it's all a
shitty
shitty reason. Yeah,
it's like those Bruce Willis, the last like 20 Bruce Willis movies that are just for Redbox.
Yeah. My response to you saying that it's a bleak version is you're not incorrect. Obviously, I agree with you there, but I think that it is supposed to be representative of like her shaken up imagination, like people trying to tell her imagination is bullshit. She's wrong. She's crazy. And then she goes to this doctor and he's like, well, we're going to take all those horrible dreams out of your head. We'll make sure that you feel better now.
Out of your brain.
But yeah, we're going to suck them out.
Electricity is a new thing that we've not seen before in science, so we're going to just do whatever we feel like with it before we realize that we're killing people and making them lobotomized.
They still do electroshock therapy to this day. But it's weird that they still do it. Yes, I know a guy.
Sparingly?
Sorry?
Sparingly?
Sparingly.
Sparingly.
I think that they don't force it on you like they are doing it to this little girl, but they still do it, and they've figured it out, I guess. But I don't know a lot about it, but I knew a person that I worked with who had it done, and he said it helps, and I was like, okay,
that's pretty good stuff, man.
No, he seemed better than before. Actually, he was a little manic, and then he came out just seeming mellow. So I'm like, okay, maybe they shocked his demons out.
Shit, you're right. They still
Did he have like a portable power battery pack or something? Like, was it like a constant thing, or he would go in for sessions?
No, he went in for sessions, and he wasn't like getting it done on a weekly basis. He just went in for a little while.
It's not as archaic as it was in the fucking 1890s. Also, you know what I mean? Like they were just shocking folk to like subdue them. They have like there's actual science behind it. It looks like from my
yeah, well, the science wouldn't exist without people like this man. So, but he also even like says like we're about to enter the 20th century, the age of electricity, and he like turns the light on like they just invented lights, and you're like, oh my god, they just invented like accessible electricity, and they're gonna shock this child so that she doesn't believe in Oz
moments later
anymore.
she turns on a light in her room and it's freaked out by it. She's like, what?
Yeah. Anyway, what I was going to say was that like it's an indicative visualization of like what Oz has been told to her as by people around her, by the doctors, by her aunt and uncle. You know, like her idea of Oz is being shaken up because she's starting to lose belief in it. And so when she does go back there, it's like fractured, it's broken because of all these people around her telling her that she's wrong and that she's crazy. So when she gets there, it's like it's not the beautiful Oz that she knew. It's a perverted version of it. And a perversion, it just means a negative deviation. All right. Look it up. Look up
I know
the word.
that I was just, it's funny because oftentimes you'll say things are perverted not in the literary sense. You'll just think that me liking Final Fantasy games is perverted.
No, I'll call you a pervert. It's different than saying a perverted version or a perversion.
I know what a perversion is, Steve. I'm not a
well, I'm calling you a pervert right now for this argument. You pervert.
Come on, he's got the pink shirt on and everything.
Oh, good.
Jason, are you the rambunctious one tonight?
Yeah, but I'm stone cold sober. I am 2 sips into a beer. I'm just feeling like being a silly goose.
Anyway, so I think I made my point. She's experiencing Oz in a way that is negative on initial impact, and it's also weird because this isn't necessarily a sequel, right? It's sort of a follow-up, a worthy follow-up, and a sequel to or an adaptation of like several of the books that come after the first book, right?
Yeah, it says it at the end. It's Ozma's Return, and it's
Ozma of Oz,
Ozma
and
of Oz, yeah.
And the Land of Oz, or the Magnificent Land of Oz. So they take stories from both of those and kind of mash them together. So the character of Mombi is actually 2 characters that they've just kind of mashed together.
And then they just kind of made her a Wicked Witch sort of a character instead of the monkeys.
Well, she's
got the Wheelers instead of
She's more similar to one of the characters in Ozma from Oz with the heads, but then her attitude is basically that of Mombi from the other one, who's more of like a classic Wicked Witch style.
Are the Wheelers?
And she has like the powder.
Are the
I don't think I think the Wheelers are made up for the movie. I don't think that they're actual things, but there's also so much.
But they couldn't do the monkeys, or were the monkeys invented for the first one?
I don't know that for a fact, but I feel like they probably wanted to do something different.
Yeah, I like the Wheelers. They're like, they freaked me out as a kid, and they freaked me out as an adult. Like then that's a weird.
They're freaky.
It's like such a weird thing. Like I want to know how they like built them, like how it works. Like just like stilt performers probably.
They are. The main Wheeler who does most of the acting also does Jack Pumpkinhead.
Okay. Yeah, I looked him up. He's in a bunch of shit. He's in a bunch of stuff as like similar characters.
He's also the main orderly. I don't know if you noticed that. Like the guy who's wheeling her down the hallway into the electroshock room. It's the same actor.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, there's so many things. Like I was just like, oh, like this guy's the Wheeler, and also the wheels on the gurney are like, like they make the same noise as the Wheeler's wheels.
And they do a shot of the wheels of the when they're traveling into town. They do like this weird shot of the wheels on the carriage, and I was like, why the fuck? And I'm just realizing now it's because it's all from Dorothy. Like the whole movie is from Dorothy's point of view, even when it's like not on her. It's like we're supposed to feel how she feels in this weird world. And then on top of it, they've added this layer that I'm really realizing now, that they've added this layer of the turn of the century. And I think that's part of the fear that is sort of prevalent, is the underwriting in everything that's going on, why it all feels so bleak and weird. I think that's probably part of it. Because
there's a layer of subtext there, but like it's a lot of it is like society and just growth and aging and time, and like the idea of your imagination being taken away from you by the world around you, and like having it being eroded and grounded down over like other people's opinions. And like I think the main sort of like subtext of this movie is that as long as you believe in your imagination, then nothing else can really destroy it unless you allow it to. And like that's her whole sort of like journey throughout this, is that like she believes, she believes that everything is real. And even in the end, she gets out and she realizes that like, okay, I don't want to go back to a crazy home, so I should probably keep Oz a secret, and I'll just have it be my place to get away from reality. And like anybody who has any sort of like imaginary world that they, invest in, whether you be a writer or like filmmaker or whatever, you're not going to make a believable world unless you kind of believe that it exists in some capacity.
I made a note about it in my notes that was like, what she should have done is, instead of sounding like a crazy kid, she should have just started writing the story of the Wizard of Oz. I know it's and then the credits just happen right then and there. But
yeah, she's like, wait a minute,
wait a second. Credits. The credits are rolling as she's writing. The
I bet I can get some money for this.
Yeah, the movie's 10 minutes long.
And she's like, and then they all sing, oh, we oh, we oh. No, I mean, she's also like a 10-year-old girl, right? Like she's trying to get people to believe, and like she lives on a fucking farm. Like she has no contact with any other children or anything to share her crazy imagination with. All she has is her uncle, who's like clearly depressed, and the aunt who's having to do all the work, right?
This movie wanted...
was the uncle the Gnome King?
No, the doctor's...
Yeah, I was going to ask that earlier. It was the doctor.
Okay, that's what I thought, but for some reason it kind of looked similar at the end.
I believe her adventure through Oz is what caused her to want to get into witchcraft and get a coven of teen girls together.
Let's give it up for Fairuza
the Craft.
My apologies if I'm mispronouncing that.
She's awesome. Like, she's got such an iconic 90s face because she's in so many like things. And watching this
Mommy said the same thing.
One of these moments.
Not pretty, you see, but or sorry, not beautiful, you see, but there's a certain prettiness there.
You're unique looking.
Yeah.
That's what she's saying there. But I did make a note that if you took Sprite back to the people in this Kansas town and gave them Sprite, they'd probably, their heads would explode. So that was funny.
They'd be like, I believe in Oz as well.
Carbonation?
Yeah, basically, but like specifically Sprite.
No, I like there's a TikToker who makes videos, or I don't know if it's just specifically TikTok, but it's one where he goes back in time and gives like a pilgrim like a Sour Patch Kid or something, and he's like, "Oh, this is sour. Have you ever tried one of these?" And he just pulls out a lemon. The guy's like, "Yes, I've tried it."
We actually got the powder for these from lemons.
Yeah. All right. The soundtrack though in this movie is dope. Is one thing that I wanted to talk about. I use it in D&D all the time. It's another one of those ones that I have on these playlists that I will just instinctively click on, and then I forget that it exists outside of D&D, and then I start watching a movie. I'm like, oh, this is the song that plays when the Illithids are coming. Instead of it being like, no, this is a song from Return to Oz.
A song from fucking Stargate. You probably used
from
music,
a movie.
Music in your DVD for this whole month. Music in your D&D this whole month, because all three of the movies we did are like, this movie has a lot more in common with Krull than Stargate did, but like, all three of them have the same. They're like traveling around movies. They travel.
And I mean Stargate movies. And Oz, like walking through a gate into a mysterious world, right? Like that was kind of the idea. It was like facing an unknown entity of some kind, which is the definition of adventure. When people are like, let's go on an adventure, like some people just think it means like walking around. It's like, no, an adventure means you're going to face something that is unknown to you. Like you're going into a situation or scenario blind, and you don't know if it's gonna be pleasant or
usually like you're not gonna walk outside into an adventure. Typically you're gonna go somewhere, you're gonna travel somewhere
all the time.
Facing the unknown. So one thing that kind of went over my head as a kid is that this story is meant to take place only 6 months after the events of the first movie, I guess, or the first book.
She got shorter.
She got shorter and younger, yeah.
And her face changed
went back
completely.
in time. But also I looked it up because I was like, well, how old was Judy Garland when she did the first movie? Because I think she's supposed to be playing younger in that movie than she is, but she's only 17. Right. When you like watch it, you're like, oh shit, she's only 17 years old.
And she was already addicted to smack.
That's why she looked older. Yeah.
She's the prototype She's the prototype child actor that
Tara Reid?
They based what? Tara Reid.
Never mind.
Judy Garland. That they based.
No, I thought you meant she was the prototype of Tara Reid.
Pretty much. Well, she's the prototype of Drew Barrymore. Drew Barrymore was like the next big one.
Yeah.
Or Liza Minnelli, her actual daughter.
Liza Minnelli. But Liza Minnelli was more like, she like was on Broadway and shit, right? More like a singer.
Mm-hmm.
She wanted to cast her own shadow.
Yeah, she was like a rock, rock, rock with the trolley. Ding, ding, ding with the bell. I'm ready for my close-up.
I'm ready for my close-up. Honey.
Was the river scene, do either of you know, was the river scene on a soundstage? Like, there's no way
man. I think
they just threw that girl in a fucking river
was...
and said, figure it out, kid. You want to get the craft when you're a teenager? You better get in that river, buddy.
I think the only sound stages in this movie were the mirror palace and like the caves and stuff, because everything else seems like they built these outdoor sets because the sky is too real in the ruined town. It almost looks like an Italian villa style, like, you know, like old stonework that they just sort of like crumbled down into.
Where they find the original house that landed on the Wicked Witch of the East, and then they go to the yellow brick road, and it's clearly just some old cobblestone road that's like 100 years old, and they put some yellow bricks down on it. At that moment, I was like, they're just in some forest outside of a city. Yeah. They're just found a little patch of forest. But now that you say Italian, like Italian, that might be.
Yeah, no, I mean, I never got the sense, like, I don't know. I guess I didn't really think of it that way, but I always felt like everything was a little bit otherworldly, you know, like it did feel like they were in these sort of like embankments on the sides of something, but in my brain it wasn't like on the side of a city. I was like, oh, they found like a field and built shit in there.
Holy shit.
And it felt Oz-like to me, and it felt vacant and empty, like in every direction to me. It did feel small for sure, like it didn't feel like expansive in the way that the original one did, but it had that sort of claustrophobia that the first one accomplished by having those crazy painted backdrops that are like right there. You know, you can, if you watch the original movie, you can see where the road ends and the painting begins, and you can tell when they're like and they're like about to run into the backdrop, and then they just like cut or fade out before they run through a paper backdrop.
It's weird that you said Italy, because I just found a Wikipedia entry that says that originally filming was to be shot 75% on location, including Oz-like locations in Algeria and Italy. However, due to budget restraints from Disney, the movie was filmed entirely in the United Kingdom at Elstree Studios. So
they probably the reason I say that it was based on the architecture of the ruined Oz, it looks a lot like Italian architecture that I'm familiar with. So they probably just recreated that stuff or found things that were similar and added rubble that added to their like original sort of vision.
Like outside of the White Lotus.
Yeah. Well, that is interesting. I didn't know that. Love an old key. I love an old key being found, and no matter what the scenario is, it could be a science fiction movie, it could be a rom-com, it could be a horror movie, it could be a horror movie for kids like Return to Oz. But when someone finds a key that they don't know what it's meant to unlock, it's like the best kind of mystery to me, is like an old key being found. I don't know, how do you guys feel about an old key
jamming it into doors? I liked that because she, like, it just looks like it's got like the no symbol on it, but then she keeps going like, see, it's O Z.
Yeah.
Zed.
No, Dorothy, it just means keep the fuck out of my business and stick to your own.
Yeah, and stop bringing up that goddamn Oz.
Stop talking about the ooze.
I don't remember Auntie M being such a jerk
Bitch.
off.
Oh, so am I not allowed to say that?
Well, in the original Wizard of Oz movie, I feel like she was a lot more understanding. Well, I guess
think
at the
everybody
end of
is
the
a little
Wizard
bit
of
less
Oz, Dorothy wakes
realistic,
up
right?
and it just says, "I had a dream that I was in this place, and you were there, because it's the same thing where all our family members are."
Playing, yeah.
But was Auntie M somebody in the original? Was she the wicked?
Well,
the nice witch?
she's
No,
the
no,
one.
the neighbor was the Wicked Witch.
No, the nice witch.
No,
Oh.
Glinda the Good Witch was nobody. Annie M and Uncle Henry are nobody. It's just
That
the
sounded so mean. Glinda the Good Witch was nobody.
Nobody.
she was a nobody. She came down in a bubble, bro. She was. I don't think she was anybody in her life, but the Annie M character is the one that like basically forces her to give away Toto, right?
Oh yes.
And then
yes.
and, like that's why she's mad and wants to run away, and then she finds Toto again. But yeah, the first movie is her wanting to run away from home, and then she realizes because the wizard is like, you should go home because your family is worried about you. Your Annie M she's crying. You know, does she have heart problems? And then Dorothy's like, oh fuck, I should go home. And then as soon as she goes outside, there's a horrifying tornado. It's a twister. It's a twister. Yeah, there aren't as many people in the original one that end up being actors throughout as this one. This one is like pretty wild, and there's also so many little visual parts, right? Like Ozma gives her or not Ozma, but the other girl in the insane asylum.
Wasn't that Ozma?
It is.
It is Ozma.
Yeah.
And I guess it's meant to be her in both worlds because she's the one that gets her out and everything. And she gives her a pumpkin, which is the Jack Pumpkin. The Electro Machine is TikTok, and
Jackie Pumpkins.
Yeah,
I read that Jack Pumpkinhead was inspiration to Tim Burton for Jack Skellington.
I can see that.
Yeah, I mean, even the beginning of the movie, Jack Skellington, before he like lights himself on fire and dives, he basically looks exactly the same as this character, except a little bit more devilish. Yeah, and I believe the guy who made all the clay effects for the gnomes was the same guy that did the Marsh.
Was that clay? Or
Yeah.
was it all clay? Like, was their face clay? I thought that might have been painted on, like frame per frame painted on or something.
Well, there's a part where he's stop frame clay, and then he's becoming more and more human, and eventually he's like just a guy with makeup.
Every time it seemed there's I couldn't really put my finger on it, but it seemed like every time he made somebody an ornament, he became more human.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that's like a thing. There's a lot of stuff in this movie they don't really explain, like the eggs.
No, but he said it though. He's like, soon no one will remember, and then I'll be human.
Okay, so
I'll be completely human.
That ornament room, him turning things into ornaments, it seems like, is what causes him to get his human form. I want to point out that dude's facial expressions are fucking amazing. When he was like almost fully human towards the end of the movie, he was just he's such a good face actor. Did you guys pick up on that at all? I thought he was doing an excellent job. I couldn't look away. This movie has a lot of like really like boring swaths of what could be.
I disagree. I think there's no boring moment in this entire movie.
That's fair. But it has, for me, because it's an 80s movie also, it has it's like old filmmaking that I don't like, where it could be a little bit expository. There could be a little bit more going on instead of just like even Krull.
I know, but there's
like
certain things in this movie that like you're asking the question, I didn't really understand why he was becoming more human. That's also meant to make you think. You're supposed to think about why it's happening and not necessarily them tell you why it's happening, right? Why is he becoming more human? Why does he need to become more human? It's not necessarily about that. What he's trying to do is eliminate the idea of Oz, because if Oz doesn't exist, then it will only be him, right? Like, and there's even an argument to be made that he is literally the Doctor encroaching into her mind, and he's becoming more human because he's bringing her further and further away from Oz. And like every time you hear one of her friends get turned into an ornament, you hear like a lightning strike, which could be him like shocking her brain in the hospital. You know, like that could, it could be like sort of representative of that. If you want to fall into that idea of it, I think there's like more going on to it than like this is the reason why. Like, because if they were to tell you, then that would be the reason why. But if they don't tell you, then you can sit here and be like, well, why?
That's fair. While we have that on the table, I have always been of the notion that she tries to escape from the mental institution and falls in the river and dies. And then this is all happening while she's in purgatory or like dying, and then it just so happens that she does not die. But then, watching it this time, right as they're about to put the thing on her head, or he's about to flip the switch, there's a lightning takes out the whole hospital's electricity. So now I'm thinking maybe the Home Alone of it all happens the moment that the lightning strike hits the place, and she is in fact being electroshock therapied the whole time. I still don't know.
I think just like the first movie, it's meant to be ambiguous to the point that you're meant to ask these questions and come to your conclusions that you prefer.
I was gonna say, then is it that when the tornado hits her house in the first movie, she just dead.
Exactly. This is all just imagination.
All of it happens after that.
Well, I mean, I think that, yeah, if you want to think of it that way, you totally can. And this is a completely different Dorothy Gale in a new scenario.
It's an MCU situation where it's a multiverse. It's a multiverse situation.
But I mean,
that's how she wants to look, or whatever. Or like her.
Yeah. I think the main sort of like idea that they constantly go with is that she suffers some sort of like trauma that sends her to Oz, and it's like Oz is literally the place that she goes in order to feel safe. And even though while she's in Oz, she's sort of processing something that happens in her real life, right? So when she's in Oz the first time in the first movie, she's having to deal with the trauma of like being lost or not being able to get home and find her family, and deal with the Wicked Witch, who is the lady down the street who tries to get her dog euthanized. And then in this movie, it's her dealing with the fact that everybody is trying to rip Oz away from her, and she just wants Oz to go back to the way it was, and that's kind of what happens at the end. She rebuilds it.
They could not have found a different looking dog than the original Toto. I thought I remember Toto being like, "That's a nice little doggy there." I feel bad for old Toto. This time I was like, "God damn it!" I'm glad Toto didn't come on this adventure because he was a mangy little mutt.
No, I like the dog.
She talks about animals talking in Oz, and Belina, the chicken or the hen or whatever, does, but Toto never talked in Oz.
No.
Oh, I have an answer for you there. It's because they didn't have the ability to make animatronic dogs talk, and it didn't look fucking stupid as hell in the 30s.
Also, I will say that Toto does bark, and she understands Toto canonically.
Ooh, touche. Okay.
So
yeah, I like that. Also, was it just me, or did they get to the Emerald City way too quick?
Well, they tell.
Yeah, but that was more just because they already did that adventure. Yeah. They don't need to have. The same adventure.
I know, but still, like.
They wanted to staple two couches together and put a weird gump on it, and then have it.
Well, I mean,
life
to
dust.
Be
life
fair,
dust. That was cocaine. I think Mombi had a cocaine problem, and
to be fair, the quest in the first movie to get to the Emerald City is one day. You're just seeing 3 different segments of her meeting 3 different people along the way, and they all sing long ass songs, and it takes 45 minutes to an hour to get there. In this movie, she wakes up, it's morning, she hops out of the crate, she finds her chicken is there, and then she finds her house, and she gets gets to the yellow brick road at dusk. So it is the course of a day. It's essentially the same amount of time. They just don't fill it with her being like, "Oh, if your life's an empty kettle, and I'm a one come on, we'll finally had a brain."
It
You know, they
finally had a
they don't do
brain.
that shit.
No, they were like, no music. Fuck
Yeah.
your ideals. We don't
I like
sing
music.
anymore. No,
But I did
little
write down
people
just to get
as
before we leave.
munchkins.
Before we leave, well, Munchkin Land is also owned by MGM. I want to get onto that at some point, but I'll tell you all about all the stuff that they couldn't do in this and the stuff that they were willing to pay for because they had to pay anytime they wanted to have something iconography wise in terms of
Wasn't
that
it the
movie. They had to
slipper?
pay a lot of. That's the main one, yeah.
That's probably
Um,
a big one, yeah.
The Toto howling though as she's riding away in the wagon. I wrote down, "Give that dog an EGOT." No, I wrote down. No. I actually wrote down, "Give that dog the $10,000."
But
Like you
I
won
wanted to
America's
ask you
Funniest
something.
Company.
I noticed that there was some weird editing for that moment. I think that
Yeah,
that
'cause it was
dog.
cute.
I think that dog was like sped up or something. I don't think they had the technology to like green screen in a sped up dog, but there was something off about Toto in that.
Well, there's
bit.
another little part like that at the end I noticed as well. I do know what you're talking about. It's
You
when
know,
she
sometimes
takes
they do like a little. They make the dog do like a trick, and it's like sped up, and it just quick cuts to that.
Yeah.
But somehow it was off in the distance, almost like it might have been superimposed in somehow.
I don't think that's what it is. So near the end of the movie, when she picks the slippers up, there's the same sort of weird jittery camera effect that you're talking about for this, and I think it's because they filmed it at a higher frame rate at a weird lighting.
Okay.
And they probably meant to have it be in slow motion or something. Like there's a couple of moments like that in this movie. So I'm thinking that he probably had in mind when he was shooting these weird slow motion moments that were going to be paired with like intense music. And he was probably editing it together and realized like this is way too intense for children. Like this is like so emotional. Like they probably had like the dog like howling and like with this like sad music playing,
Yeah,
and like
for-
people are probably like, this is too much
An
for
extended
kids.
2 or 3 minutes of the dog, like
Yeah.
her yelling like Toto, no, and the dog howling like all winning the EGOT and getting the $10,000 on America's Funniest People somehow. Yeah, that's true. Maybe they edited it down a little bit for that, but I still think that the dog like licks its face and it looked wrong. You know, like it.
I'm telling you, I think it's the high frame rate.
Yeah.
Like because if you film something at a high frame rate, it's meant to be slowed down when you use a certain lighting, and if you don't, it looks weird, looks strange. And I think because I noticed it a couple of times in the movie where there was this weird effect where it almost looks sped up, but it isn't, and it's kind of jittery. And I'm like, that was supposed to be a slow motion shot. I wonder why they didn't put it in slow motion. And then I was like stewing on it a little bit. I'm like, they probably had these scenes where like there was meant to be this emotional music
They
playing.
also had like stop motion artists working all over the movie too, so they probably employed some of that technique for the dog, just so the dog they don't have to put as much into having the dog, like using the dog's acting. They could just take what they want and make it happen, almost like animated the dog.
Anyway, the dog deserves an award.
The dog was good, but I hate the way it looks.
What do you guys think of Fairuza Balk and her like slight Judy Garland impression? Like this kid
Loved
is
it.
fucking killing it in this movie.
A, loved it. B, made a note. Every time that she did a little curtsy, like a little like hello,
Mhm.
I laughed out loud. I thought it was the most adorable shit. I thought it was incredible that she is this 10-year-old actor putting on a Judy Garland, and then that's not, you don't write that kind of thing into a script. That's like completely ad lib when somebody just does a little like while talking curtsy like that, like hello. I absolutely loved her performance. She
doesn't
kind
get
of a bad
annoying.
actor.
Because like child actors
Yes.
often get very annoying throughout movies, or like if your whole movie relies on a kid, there's gonna be moments where you're like, ugh, all right, get me through this. But I didn't feel that through the movie. It was like, this kid is actually just carrying this whole movie, and she's acting against puppets and fucking weird robot men, and like it's all just her.
What I was gonna say is like, I don't think that she's necessarily a good actor. But what you're saying is right, and her ability to be in these moments and be acting with just there were scenes where she's interacting with like a man in a fucking pumpkin suit, an animatronic gump or moose, fucking the chicken. The chicken breaks all the fucking laws of practical effects.
Breaks all the rules.
Sometimes it's just a chicken going like.
Also, that chicken is our greatest
I
living
am a
comedian.
chicken who can talk.
No, she's the greatest living comedian who ever existed. I don't know. That chicken is hilarious. When they walk in and she's like, "Oh, just our luck, huh? We're running into a bunch of stiffs. Oh, they don't seem to be going anywhere fast."
Yeah.
This dog or this chicken
She
knows how to make me laugh.
She reminds me of what was that woman's name from the 80s and 90s? She dressed in a trash bag when she did comedy.
I don't know.
Trash bag Tina.
I do think that her Veruca, or is it not Veruca? Fairuza, right? I keep wanting to say Veruca Salt from.
There's a Z. I don't know if that.
Well, I'm thinking Veruca Salt from Willy Wonka. You know, the one who's like, "I want a golden goose now." Okay, Veruca.
Yeah.
I think that she probably watched The Wizard of Oz a shitload, like in
Yeah.
her, before she got this role, and was probably just like always doing Judy Garland impressions because it doesn't happen throughout the entire movie, but like when she says like, "This was the yellow brick road," like it sounds like perfectly like the accent and like the weird sort of like intonation of her delivery is just like she's channeling Judy Garland in a way that I'm like, I would usually be like, ugh, at a moment like this. You know, like, it reminds me of Donald Glover playing Lando, where he does like a little bit of a Billy D. Williams, but like not enough for you to be like, stop doing this. Like it's perfect. It just reminds you of like the other movie without totally making you feel like you're watching an impression, which is pretty amazing for a 10-year-old child to pull off. So, marks to her. Good job. You're a good actor. We talked about the lunch pail tree. What would be your perfect lunch pail tree? I think is the question I wanted to ask you guys.
I'll tell you. It would be a butter chicken roti, some jasmine rice, some samosas, and I think let's top it off with some veggie pakoras.
Jason pulls his phone and opens Uber Eats like immediately.
Hold on a second. I didn't have dinner. Oh, Phyllis Diller was the person I was trying to come up with. Phyllis Diller. Remember Phyllis Diller? Anyway, we moved on from that thought.
Kaylin, your perfect lunch pail tree lunch.
I'll take
Sure, go on. It's not roast chicken.
Tuna sandwich melt with celery pieces in the sandwich on a bagel.
Whoa.
Bagel? The chicken's like, you think this tree can create bagels? What are you fucking nuts?
That took several
Good thing
turns.
it's not fried chicken.
When you say a tuna melt, do you have it as like the grilled cheese style where the cheese is inside with the tuna, or the tuna melt where you melt the cheese on the sandwich?
Like an open face sandwich?
Yeah.
So what I have a little what's that little oven called?
Toaster oven?
Anyway. Yeah, toaster oven, exactly.
It's like a regular oven, but you can only fit tiny pieces of bread in it.
Maybe one
And it
piece of
toasts
pizza,
them.
maybe
Things
or
that you
two
want to
pieces.
toast.
Yeah, we don't have a microwave. I have a toaster oven.
But yeah, no, I would slice the bagel, I would get my tuna, my mayo, my celery chunks, whip that together, put that on each half of the bagel, put cheese on top, do the melt, then put a little bit of mustard on top, and then smush it together.
That's a dope. Sounds dope. Wow. I have
salt and pepper as well.
You gotta have salt and pepper. I've got turkey in the freezer from Christmas that I'll pull one piece of turkey out to make like a turkey salad sandwich with celery and onion.
Yeah.
And I fucking love a tuna salad sandwich also.
Yes. You gotta have celery pieces.
Yes,
Good
you gotta put the
choices.
celery
Good
in there.
choices.
I just get
What about you, Steve?
$45 worth of, I want $45 worth of fucking Indian food in my pail, and Kaylin wants a tuna melt on a bagel.
Hey, nothing wrong. Don't make fun of that.
No, I'm not.
Yeah,
It's not making
anti-bully
fun.
It's
day.
anti-bullying
It's not
day.
making fun. It's just
I'm
funny.
inconvenienced.
You yuppie fuck.
Yeah, it's also inconvenience yourself day. Self-inconvenience day.
I think that in my lunch pail, I would probably have like a, I don't know, like maybe like I want something light because it's for an adventure, right? Like you don't want it to be too heavy. You don't want to feel like you're going to take a nap afterwards, right? So I think Kaylin's on the
Or
right
a big
track.
dump.
Yeah, so I'm thinking like a hearty salad, like a salad with like chunks of like chicken in it, or we'll go with. Oh, God, I forgot the chicken's there. Is the
Belina would
chicken
hate
here?
that.
Yeah,
Why
is
is there-
Belina
Oh,
here
yeah.
with me
Why
in
is
this
there
situation?
chicken on your salad, you freak?
All right, maybe I just
maybe
want
it's some sort of made-up animal.
maybe I just want a gourmet ham sandwich like Dorothy had, and I'll just I'll have that, and then like a couple of juice boxes in there.
I thought Kaylin would be a purist and want the ham sandwich. Honestly, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
I
I think you
had
need to
a
go
ham
with like
sandwich earlier today.
a better ham sandwich than what that she, because I saw her eating it, and that thing looked pretty light. Also white bread. Ugh. What a pervert.
What's wrong with white bread?
Racist.
Do you think that those are like they manifest what you want in them, or is it just like you're gonna get a peanut butter and jelly
I was
one,
gonna-
and like if you open it and you're allergic to peanuts, you just like die.
You're like, fuck this. I was gonna ask you guys the same question because I kind of interpreted like maybe closer to what you said first, where it's whatever you sort of want in your heart, but also if it's not that, I think it's just different. What you would find in a kid's lunchbox,
Like different trees, different lunches.
or even in that,
Or like
same...
a construction worker's lunchbox, because that's
Yeah.
kind of what it looks like, right? Like
Yeah.
a lunch pail. Something that you would have as a blue collar worker that you would just take with you. Like that's what I mean. It's like an on the go. It's an energy box basically, just to like make sure you can get to your.
If this
next
movie was
destination.
Japanese, it would be a bento box. It would have all the trappings of a bento box. If it was from other places in the world, it would have different things. If it was Canadian, it would just be filled with maple syrup.
Yeah, so in
Did
Howl's
people
Moving
used
Castle,
to
it's a
carry
bento
their
box.
lunch around in pails like that? Was that a real thing?
Yes, lunch pails used to look like that.
Yeah,
Interesting.
It
a
looked
literal
like a.
pail.
That's why it's called a lunch pail, because it was just a little pail that you would carry around with a lid on it. It was to keep your.
It looks like it almost looks like you're carrying around garbage or something. You know, like I'm trying to find the words to say this properly.
you've already said
But,
it's
like-
garbage, so
Yeah, it looks like you're carrying around garbage or something. What's in there? Garbage.
I'm bringing my
No, it's
garbage
my
to work.
lunch.
What do you want from me?
It's my lunch. I do like the little detail that she, says like one for now and one for later, and she's like taking one because she knows she's gonna get hungry, which just obviously indicates she's smart. Like she's not just thinking about the moment; she's thinking about she's gonna be hungry later too.
Did
She
you
also-
notice she saved the less ripe one for later?
I did
that's
notice
big.
that.
That's big brain.
That's a
She
good.
also, the second she gets an opportunity to take a nap, she's like, "We gotta get some sleep. We're in for it tomorrow." So yes, I think Dorothy Gale is extremely intelligent. Was her last name Gale in the original?
Yes,
I don't ever remember.
it's
her having
because
a-
she's carried away by a tornado. That's
I
why
get
her
it.
name is
Thank
Gail.
you. Once again, not a dummy. I get the slight.
I didn't.
The subtle,
That's the first I've heard that. I didn't get that. I didn't know
the
that.
subtlety. Well, a gale is a wind.
No. I mean, yeah. Now, once you said it, I got it, but
Oh.
I didn't get that.
But also that lunchbox comes into play when she finds TikTok and he uses it as a medieval flail, which I
Yeah.
love.
My brain is an idiot, and every time they said TikTok, I watch shit with subtitles, and his name is TikTok, like
the exact same.
like the app. And every time, I think
Can
this
they
is the first-
sue?
I was thinking about it. I was like, wow, this is a Disney IP. This would be a big, like, we own the rights to the TIKTOK.
They don't own the rights to
hyphen.
that though, because
Oh,
it's
just wait. His
it's
has
from
hyphen. I don't think the app has a hyphen.
it's
Oh.
from a book series that is it's
70
open
years
source.
old?
It's free.
Okay.
It's free use. You can use those title. If all three of us wanted to right now write a Wizard of Oz story, we would be allowed to use it to do it and use all the characters that exist in there. We just wouldn't be able to use the stuff that's copywritten, created by Disney or MGM.
Can we
All
make
the
an
other
app
stuff.
of it?
Oh, that's a hard question to answer.
That means that it hurt his brain too much, and we're gonna move on now.
Because it was a
And he's
question that
being
made no
nice.
fucking sense.
Yeah.
What do you mean by
Nice.
that?
See, he was being nice. We should have just moved on. It's anti-bullying day. No bullying.
My next note is like you said, Kaylin. Jack Skellington was inspired by Jack-o'-lantern from this, and I do believe that's correct. And I was trying to make the point earlier, but I think we got off topic that the guy who made all the stop frame animation for this movie worked on the Mark Twain movie, who's also the guy who took on Henry Selick as a protege, who directed The Nightmare Before Christmas eventually. So it would not surprise me if Henry Selick was working on this movie in some capacity.
What's that called? 6 degrees of connection or whatever?
Of Kevin Bacon.
This isn't Tremors.
No,
6 degrees of Kevin
6
Bacon is
degrees
a
of-
game you play when you're on road trips, and 6 degrees of separation means that in any
That's the one.
capacity you
Yeah.
could find your way to connect to anybody on the planet within 6
I
other
think
people.
Kaylin is right. That you could probably make 6 degrees from this movie to Jake Skellington.
I could make 1 degree. I just made it.
You just
I
made
told
it.
you.
Oh yeah.
I just told you it.
No,
Okay.
you named like 2 or 3 people. That's like 3 degrees.
All right, Henry Selick and the guy
Yeah.
who did the claymation for this movie
Yeah.
is his mentor.
Whose? Oh,
Henry
Tim?
Selick.
That's 1 degree.
Henry Selick is the director of Nightmare Before Christmas.
Oh,
Yes.
damn.
There's
Okay.
literally no degrees. It's a straight line from one to the other.
The stop motion claymation shit in this movie was like some of the
Pretty great.
best stuff.
Yeah.
Some of the best. I just watched it on Disney Plus, and Disney Plus upscales everything. You know, it's all like
I watched it. Yeah, I watched it on that.
all their
too.
shit's remastered, so it all looks awesome.
Yeah. Actually, fun fact. This movie, when it was released on DVD, they used a really shitty quality, and because the movie was because the movie was so poorly received when it was released in theaters and on VHS, that they just used a shit VHS transfer to the DVD, so it just looked like crap. But if I watched it on Disney Plus, and it looks pretty great. Like even the compositing and the blue screen and stuff, like it's not janky. It all looks pretty great. Like there
Yeah,
was no moment where I was like, "Oh, you can see the line."
You can see a bit of the like green screen lines sometimes for some stuff, but overall, this is like I watched this movie in 2020 or 2021 and reviewed it, and I remember thinking that I don't get how everybody has seen this movie. When you say this movie to people, they're like, "I've seen it." But it's not like a cultural phenomenon. It's more like a cult movie that everybody has seen. It absolutely fits the "Hey, did you see this one?" like moniker, because this is totally like you're at a party.
The analogy
like,
that I like
have
to
you
make.
seen Return to Oz? And then you and the person just like remember every moment of the movie.
The analogy that I like to make is like there was a time once where all of us of a certain age were sat around a campfire and we're all told the same scary story at the same time.
Yeah.
And it's burned into our memory so hard that we remember it so visually that at any point you can talk to somebody about this movie and they'll be like, "Oh yeah, and then that weird shit happened. That
'Cause
weird
it's a horror movie.
lady with a billion heads in
And
closets."
every horror movie. You see
Also,
it
those
once.
head showcases, or that hall of head showcases, was also
Very good.
Very good, yeah.
But that's why I put this in the realm of horror, because every horror movie you ever see, whether it's like scary or not, you're always going to remember things from it. When it's in the genre of horror, there's just going to be things in it that are going to stay with you, and the movie's going to stay with you. And even though I don't like the original Halloween, I can play the whole movie in my head because it's so like visually unique. And
I think he likes it.
Well, no, it's not that. It's the Avatar thing where I fucking don't like the world of Pandora and the Blue Cat people, but when it's presented properly, it's fucking great. Talking about Halloween was 100 times more fun than watching the movie. I was listening to the BS Bargain.
I put a giant X on my notes because I thought this was going to be the first episode we could get through without talking about Avatar, since Jason has seen Avatar, but it's didn't happen. Maybe next week, folks.
Okay, and I also lost my train of thought on what I was gonna.
You watched Bargain Bin? Did they do Halloween or something?
No, it's one of Ben's favorite movies, but I was gonna talk about it's like a presentation thing, but I forgot what my point was. So let's move on. This
All right.
fucking Jason talks about Avatar, whether he hates it. Fucking Days Without Incident. Fucking zero.
Yeah,
Steve
it's like
walks up
it's like
the
a
ladder
warehouse where you
puts a
have to
zero on.
erase it. Yeah. God damn it! Maybe next time. So we're more or less at the point where she arrives at TikTok, and this moment always kind of like, obviously the Wheelers are very freaky, and this is the watch through that I really honed in on the fact that those orderlies at the beginning are the Wheelers, because the one has a very particular, or like a very like unique looking face, I guess.
I
It's
thought
kind of
he
like
was the
droopy
guy.
and
I thought he was the guy from Max Headroom, the Canadian actor who's in like a million
right.
things. But he's
No, he's
not...
like he's almost like a circus performer guy.
Yeah.
Like he's also the one that like he created the way that Jack should walk, and he also sort of pioneered how the Wheelers should move, and like he's like a stilt performer and stuff. Like I wouldn't be surprised if he worked in like Planet of the Apes and shit, like he's one of those guys.
Like helped organize Cirque du Soleil.
But he also did the
style.
voice of Jack, which is kind of cool. Like a lot of the times people like that will just be put in purely physical performances, and they'll use a different voice actor. And not until the days of our teenage years when Andy Serkis became like a face. Like they're like, "You're Smeagol," and he's like, "That's right." And then he becomes like Caesar and all these other roles.
He was Smeagol and Caesar before he was ever in any movies like as Andy Serkis, right?
Isn't
yeah? But now he's in tons of stuff as himself.
Alfred?
Yeah.
Does he play Alfred? Yeah.
Yes. He's also Snoke, and he's in Star Wars as another role. He's in a lot of stuff. He's in Wakanda and Wakanda Forever.
He's a badass looking what's his face from Parks and Rec.
Oh, was he Alfred in Joker?
No, he was Alfred in
Alfred in
the
Batman.
Batman.
The Batman, right?
Oh yeah, weird. I liked that movie, but I blocked a bunch of shit about it out of my head.
I mean, yeah, fair. It's
They're gonna
so
make
long.
The Penguin movie based on that
long.
version of the Penguin, and I think that's where that universe loses me.
You don't want to see Colin Farrell as like, "Whoa, hold on, sweetheart. We all gonna take a kiss each other on the cheeks here and put our glasses down."
I do, but I'm worried that they're gonna put some. I'm worried that there's gonna be no fun. Like
that's pretty fun to me.
That version of the Penguin, I liked it. In contrast to the Batman, I like when the Penguin's a low-level criminal, but I want to also go back to having the Penguin being a weirdo from the sewers who wants to bite you on the nose and be a. If he bites anybody on the nose, I'm in. If he eats raw fish, 100%.
But I mean, the Penguin is more accurate to like what the Penguin's supposed to be than the one who bites people's nose and has flipper hands.
I know. The old he's like the '60s fucking
holy
Adam West.
Balls.
Yeah, he's got like the long cigarette. He fucking just has a monocle. The Arkham City.
I played
Cockney,
this city like a hop from hell.
the Cockney accent version from the Arkham games is like he's just like a low level criminal.
Yeah, but he has like a broken Coke bottle in his eye, like
yeah.
it's been jabbed into his skull.
Yeah.
Way too much.
I just want Danny DeVito to reprise his role as the.
Hey, maybe he will in the Flashpoint movie. Yeah.
In the Flash.
The head nerd. Okay, so we got to the Wheelers. The Wheelers are scary, and when they're going down that hallway, and they're just like they're doing like a Krusty the Clown clap. I said that they're doing bird noises too, which is really freaky. Like they're like talking to each other with bird chirps, which I don't know if that was referenced at any point earlier in the movie, but it is very off-putting as well to be like, holy, these guys are just like cawing at each other like monster people.
When they chase her into the tomb thing, like the mausoleum area,
the hallway,
they just like fall, like they just keep going too. Like they don't have, there's nothing going on inside their head. They're just like agents of chaos.
I think that the way that they think is like everyone is scared of us, but they don't know what to do once they get into a situation where they actually have to like fight themselves, because like everybody runs away from them all the time because they're so fast and they're scary and they're weird. So like they're just like walking towards her slowly, being like, "You're gonna give up, aren't you?" Like making their bird noises and their Pee Wee Herman sounds, and they're like crawling up on her, and then she opens that door and gets inside, and then they rush her, right? Like it's almost like they are like an animal being more scared of you than you are of them situation, where they, which I kind of find interesting and cool, because it shows that they are henchmen, but they're like no more than henchmen. They're just there to be a mass of like scary things that if you ran at them, they would probably run away from you. You know, like that's kind of how I feel about them. But they're so
I
used to
interpret it
people.
kind of as they weren't allowed to do the flying monkeys, and
They were very flying monkey adjacent, in my opinion, but
Yeah,
they had more
yeah.
humanity than like a literal monkey.
But they also probably came up with that idea of being like, what if they're like weird creatures that have wheels for hands and feet? And they're like, you know, they're trying to like come up with a direct parallel to things she's seen before she's going into
flying versus
Oz.
driving.
No, like the orderlies are literally
Oh,
wheeling
right.
her through the
From her.
hallways.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
they're wheelers. They're wheeling her, and then they have wheels for hands and feet, and like that's kind of interesting and cool to me.
Oh, kind of like the wheel bed is like the yeah. Okay. I see what you're saying. Like the wheelers are the manifestation of the wheelie, the dolly, or whatever.
Yeah, and
the
because
wheels
when she's being pushed, the only face she can see is that guy's face, the main wheeler. That's like it's him. He's the same actor, right?
Yeah.
And like they show his face multiple times, and I think this is my first watch through that it clicked in my brain, being like, wait a minute, that guy's the guy later who's like being interrogated by TikTok, being like, whoa, whoa. You know, and he's like holding him by the scruff of his collar, and he's like, I'll beat the shit out of you. Tell me what I need to know. I am TikTok.
I saw a cool image of the actor, or like they had the TikTok opened, and the actor is like, huddled inside of it.
He's a ball. Yeah, that looks so like I can't imagine how much that would suck. Like being inside, like it would just be people yelling through like those air holes, being like, "All right, Samson, we gotta go down this hallway. Just hold my hand." With what?
Yo, but he got up those steps pretty good. Or down the, was it down the steps or up the steps? No, up the steps.
His hands and feet are in the feet,
right?
In the legs.
Yeah.
So he's using his hands and feet to walk. But you can tell when he's moving, it's just like it's so painful looking to know that there's a guy in there walking like that. But then the only thing that saves it is like the music that they play, like it's like, you know, it matches his gait as he's walking.
It's so funny too that they have like counterparts to, like, Jack is very similar to a scarecrow. Obviously the military guy is very similar to Tinman. And then an animal who's like doesn't have much to say. Kind of like, even though Cowardly Lion's a huge part of most of the plot of the first one. But Gump is, I don't know. Gump's kind of the odd man out on this one, I think. He's not.
I always thought Gump was more like the lion and the chicken was like Toto but could talk kind of thing.
That's what I meant to say. What did I?
No, yeah. You got it.
Oh, okay. I thought you said Gump. You said Gump was the odd man out.
No, I mean he's supposed to be the Cowardly Lion, obviously, but but their parallel is that they're both talking animals, and that's about it.
Yeah, but I mean, they all have completely different personalities from one another.
Yeah,
right?
that's
like,
true. That's true.
So, like,
I have a question about the lion. Do you guys know if in the original book the lion, like, so in the first movie, when she gets back, it's like, and her uncles or whatever, like, you were there, like one of them looks like the lion or whatever, right? Whereas in this one, it's an actual animal. And I was wondering if in the original book, was the uncle looking like the lion in that, or was that just added for the first movie?
From the book, you mean?
Yeah.
I
don't know. But that's a good point.
I didn't understand the question.
So, like, in the book, is the Cowardly Lion just like a lion, or did they make it so in the movie he looks like?
In the movie, all three of her companions are the three farmhands.
Are the three farmhands.
Right.
But
is that taken from the book, or is that produced for the movie?
Because what Kaylin's asking is, in this movie, the Cowardly Lion looked straight up just like a literal lion. Like
and the scarecrow looked like a rubber-faced, horrifying monster, and the Tin Man looked like a bunch of buckets stacked on top of each other. Like, they don't look like people.
Well, and that's what I'm saying, though. So was that fabricated?
Oh no! In the books, so the actual illustrations in the books look far more similar to this movie.
No. I don't mean what they look like, though. I just mean in the first movie, she says you were there because like they looked like them, right? So was that
Yeah, in the
just
books they don't
created
look
for
like
the
it.
movie?
I
And in the
assume that-
original books, that she never saw her family represented in the characters.
It was
Yeah.
probably more personality than it was them literally being played by actors.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's what Kayla was asking. That's a good question.
Yeah, in the so like yeah, in the movie, obviously they have the luxury of just casting the actor to play those roles, right? Whereas in the books, it's just drawings and it's your imagination, and then it's up to your imagination to do that. But in terms of the story, I don't recall if that's just a movie thing or a book thing because I haven't read the book since I was a child.
The question is more so that like when she wakes up in the book, throughout the book, is it implied that these characters look like these farmhands?
Yeah, I know. I think I answered the question.
Yeah. Okay. I thought that you were still having a little bit of
no. I understand the question.
Okay.
I understand the question.
I'm a confusing person. I'm sorry.
I got it immediately.
According to
Cage.
Google,
I got it.
Deep Roy played the Tin Man.
Which I don't get because Deep Roy is a tiny little man.
Yeah.
So what does that even mean?
Maybe he's just in the body of the Tin Man.
Did Deep
But
Roy
he's a
play
tiny
TikTok?
man.
Yeah, no, but that's what I'm saying. He's just in the body. Not in the legs or anything.
So Deep Roy is also a puppeteer. So what it probably was is that he was probably had like sticks and was like, like from behind or something from lower than the camera could get because he's a little guy.
I wonder if Deep Roy was in the background as like a cameo bit as one of the munchkins at the end.
I'm like, why didn't they put Deep Roy in TikTok instead of having a man like?
Maybe his legs wouldn't fit, like to each side. Like that was an exaggerated like.
Yeah, no, they wanted him to be like a perfect sphere.
It was like
right?
when Homer gets off the tiny horse or whatever. I think that's from The Simpsons or Homer's
goddamn rickets. One thing before she goes into Oz, the nurse, she is desperately trying to save those children. Or like I was looking out for it in this movie. She only yells Dorothy. She does not yell Dorothy or children or like girls or anything. She only yells Dorothy, and she yells stop and come back, and like she's desperately trying to save Dorothy from the river.
Ozma is interesting in the before part in the ward because
she's like a ghost.
She comes into the room with the pumpkin head that is very real in reality, but is it? Also, she Dorothy turns her head and turns back and she's gone. Like there isn't enough time for her to open and close the door.
Yeah, she says I gotta go, and then she's gone.
Thought there was some weird stuff with that. I also thought while I'm watching Dorothy in this room, which what must have been 8 hours, were kids before there was any toys or fun or anything? Were kids bored all the time? Just
no,
bored?
They had a stick and a hula hoop.
Okay, but that's if you're not stuck in literally a mental asylum. Was she just?
Yeah. It's like being in jail.
They just show her on the bed at one point. You're just sitting there like.
She's probably using her imagination. I think about before I had a phone, and when I was a kid, I'd be on the toilet, for example, and I didn't have a phone to be
I would read
TikTok videos.
I would read the shampoo bottle.
I would look at the tile or the wallpaper, and I would use my imagination to see things in the wallpaper, shapes created in people's faces and people in poses, and that's what I would do. I would sit there and just stare at the little the repeating patterns, and make shit in my brain. So I think that maybe I'm a little bit more similar to Dorothy, where if I'm in that room, I'm looking at the imperfections in the spackling and the mortar that's holding the wall together.
Well, and Steve, I'll tell you right now that I was a kid who was given. I'm one of those kids that's given an iPad too early now. Except the difference was it was just TV raised me. It was just you shut up.
Oh, you had a TV in the bathroom.
Shut up. Go sit. No, we had magazines in the bathroom. We had one of those baskets of magazines.
Well, I don't know how to read to this day, so I wouldn't have been.
Oh, jeez. What a reveal.
What are those glasses for?
I don't even know if I'm reading my own notes.
I know. He's wearing glasses and he's reading his own notes. I can't even figure it out. What does this say? Do you know what any of this says?
It says watch us on TikTok over and over again, repeating.
That's a really educated, good guess. Okay, fair enough.
Mm-hmm.
Fair enough.
So I noticed that throughout her initial journey, they have the panning to the rocks that show the amazing, which still look fucking amazing. Look better than CGI. Like the clay coming up on the stone.
CGI. We've said it before, and I'll keep saying it every time.
But this is different because you can also see so many shitty examples of clay animation and stop frame animation that's so jarring. But for some reason, in the context of this movie, having it be stone that's shifting and moving, and they lock the shots off so they're not that complicated, but like it is still so impressive and like off-putting. Like I'm gonna keep using the word off-putting and unsettling because that's a lot of the visuals in this movie
That's a great word for this movie, man. Like 90% of the time you're like, what?
And I also love that, like, they come up and they're watching and they're like, dun, 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 and like looking at her, and then they go back down. And then it's like that one guy's face who's like, she's here, Dorothy Gale has returned to us. And he's like, good. And he's like, but she also has a chicken. And like the guy's face, like he gets so scared, but like you don't see the Gnome King for so long, which is a really smart choice because you're like building up what he might look like forever in your mind, and then the initial reveal of him is that he's also just a face, but then he slowly becomes like a person sitting in a throne, and it's still like you can't really tell, and then he like becomes more and more defined as he's becoming more comfortable with them. It's almost like he's putting his guard down and becoming more hospitable to them, being like, let's sit down and have a conversation.
Let's have some boiling silver.
Yeah, and some key lime pie.
Limestone pie.
Speaking of faces, though, I think I just had sort of an epiphany about like her seeing things in the real world that manifest themselves in this world. The actual machine that she's about to get electroshock therapized by is sort of TikTok. Sort of has the same look.
Oh yeah, the electro machine. Yeah.
And I think as a kid, I just had this moment where I was like, I knew that already, but didn't pick it up this time until we started talking about it. But I think as a kid, I put that together.
Yeah.
And
I see it, but the TikTok character helps her. Where that machine. Well, I guess it's supposed to help her. Yeah. Okay,
well, I mean, there's an argument to be made that like as soon as he's about to shock her, because it would be him shocking her, the power goes out. Maybe he short circuited the entire building, and that's why she thinks of that machine as like a friend.
Okay.
It also could explain why every time he's about to do something super helpful, he breaks down.
He just runs off or
whatever.
Actually,
that wasn't that on the rules? It's like, wind me up, I'll last for 1,000 years. And I'm like, what? No.
You said wind me up tight. She's too weak to do it tight enough. She's like a little girl. And also those things look like they were hard to turn.
I mean, maybe him as a whole, like not him actively doing things lasts 1,000 years, but him as a, like you wind me up and then do it again, like, and you keep doing that for 1,000 years is what I thought. Like at first I was like, that was when he first started not working after she wound him up. It's like, that was definitely not 1,000 years. He said something about that fight must have wore me out. But then I thought about it later. I was like, oh, maybe it's just like you keep doing it. Kind of like, you buy whatever technology that we buy these days, like it'll last, you have to put batteries in or whatever, but it still lasts for
like lithium batteries will last 1,000 years, but you have to charge them every 6 hours or whatever.
We're coming up on an era though where like if you go buy a Game Boy game, the batteries are all dead. You have to get the batteries replaced.
I got a Game Boy right here.
The batteries on your save files are gonna die one day.
There's also kind of like a sad quote on the back. Like the instructions on the back of TikTok, or like it says, like
no nipples. That different.
No, that's the front of him. It says like, do not expose my nipple, or I will be cancelled. Dun, 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 dun. No, it says something like, it's something about like can never die, but will never live or something. Like it's
Oh,
a
yeah,
quote
yeah.
like that, and you're like, oh man, that's kind of sad. And then she winds him up, and he's like, I cannot feel emotions, but I also am super sick at fighting, mostly spin moves. And you're like, okay, cool TikTok.
He's like Robo from Chrono Trigger. There, I didn't do
Video
Final
game insert.
Fantasy.
That's Final Fantasy adjacent. Yeah.
But there we go. Let's cross an X over that too. Days Without Incident.
But he also gives us a little bit of expository dialogue, which we're desperately in need of at this point, right? Because she's trying to piece together shit, and she doesn't know. She's gone into the city. Everyone's turned to stone, including the Tin Man, or the Tin Woodsman, and the Cowardly Lion,
which is what it's called in the books.
Yo, did they tell that story in the story about the Tin Woodsman? Did they tell that in the first movie?
No. So they call him the Tin Man in the MGM, so they couldn't call him the Tin Man in this, so they call him the Tin Woodsman, which is what he's called in the books.
Right.
Just so you know. But it's her explanation at the beginning of the movie where it's like he was a man and then he cut his own leg, or he got his leg cut off, so he replaced it with a tin leg, and then eventually he was like fully replaced with tin. Yeah, that's more accurate to the book where the MGM is like, or the original MGM story is just like he was built by some guy, and he's like, my creator forgot to give me a heart. But he is like mostly human, which like in my brain, if you open up his chest panel, it's just like full of human organs, like nasty, gross human organs. But it's also the explanation as to why he turned to stone and TikTok didn't turn to stone.
Oh, nice. Good call. Yeah.
Yeah. But TikTok gives us a bit of explanation saying, like the King Scarecrow locked me in here and told me to wait for Dorothy Gale. That's you, right? All right, let's get out of here. And he like goes out and he beats up all the Wheelers in like 2 seconds.
Why does that song by the Edgar Winter Group play?
Because he's dope and badass. He's like,
Jason, what kind of hat is that?
This is margin screen printing. Let's get this is a little ad read right now and right here. Margin screen printing is my dad's t-shirt printing business. He prints.
Can you make some?
T-shirts.
Hey, did you see this one? T-shirts and hoodies.
Yeah, absolutely. Come look for those in quarter 2, 2023. Quarter 3, 2023. I'll tell you what that is. It's from this.
We're talking about
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, we finally get some expository dialogue, which is that the whole city started turning to stone. He's not sure why, but he thinks it has something to do with the Gnome King. They go out, he fights all the Wheelers at once, he beats the shit out of all of them and snags the main one by the collar and starts to interrogate him. And this guy reveals, like, oh, the Gnome King did it. But Princess Mombi is in charge of this city now or whatever. And so they're like, take us then, Princess Mombi. And he says no, and then eventually they convince him. I also wanted to mention that the headless statue is also very unsettling and freaked me the fuck out as a kid because they explain like they've all been turned to stone, and then before you see them, they explain that, and then they go into the square, and they're all missing their heads, and like to me that's horrifying. I'm like, what happened to their heads? And like their heads aren't around.
She freezes them in stone, and either before or after this process, she takes their head and then
puts
them.
I think she did the stone first, and then put the cut it off, and then put the powder on it.
Yeah,
probably. Yeah, that would make sense. Or just had a way of reversing it. Yeah,
powder of life, powder of living, or whatever.
That's what they used to call cocaine.
Conspiracy theory.
I need my powder of living.
That's what they used to call the powder of life.
She did get really angry. That's what happens to them when they don't have it.
She is desperate as fuck when she gets to the Gnome King's chambers.
I need my powder of living. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what they called cocaine in 1985.
You would listen to the Edgar Winter Group.
The powder.
And it would
oh my
snow
god!
Because it's winter, and then it'd be like.
I do want to, for a minute, talk about how the design of the lion and the Tin Man. It's the first time you're really seeing any of the old classic characters, right? And like I said before, the poster that Kalen has behind him, it's sort of advertised to you as a kid because this movie came out years before I was born. And I think the reason I probably wanted to rent it in the first place was to see a Tin Man that looked like that and a lion that looked like that on an adventure, but I never got to. And
But
they
also
look
a
cool.
whole generation after the original, like almost 50 years, more than 50 years.
No,
after
it was
the original.
49. I think it was like 47 years or something.
That's
crazy.
a whole
It was like,
generation, though.
I know, but I watched. So before I saw this movie, I watched the original like 1,000 times. Like I had it on VHS, so like I knew that I loved it and I wanted to see it. But the point that I'm trying to make is that the designs are really cool and they are pulled from after reading the books as a kid and like doing a little bit of research today, I'm like, these are like almost exact designs from the original illustrations. Like they just, instead of trying to emulate the original MGM stuff, they're like, let's just make it look like the book, and they did.
I like that design of the Tin Man better than the weird
painted man who had to be hospitalized because the paint was poisoning.
The same paint that they use. It's that same paint that they use for Goldfinger, the lady.
I thought you were gonna say submarines.
Yeah, it's like house paint basically. It's like
he almost died.
Yeah.
So the point that I wanted to make was that you start to get to know these other characters. TikTok is introduced here, and then Jack shortly afterwards. And as a kid, you're like longing for the Tin Man and the lion and the scarecrow a little bit. Like I want the characters that I know, but then you start to be charmed by TikTok and charmed by Jack, and then when Gump shows up, you're like, I don't even fucking care anymore about Tin Man and the Cowardly Lion. These characters are awesome.
We're almost going into an era of that in the MCU now, where we're going to be seeing callbacks in a similar way, where it's not directly that character, especially with the multiverse. That's why this feels like a multiversal kind of experience.
Sure, yeah. Because
we see them, we get them almost immediately. She gets there, she gets to the mausoleum place. Boom! We see Tin Man and Cowardly Lion, and guess what? They're statues, and they were like mid-action, like they were partying.
Yeah. Well, the Tin Man is about to ask somebody a question.
Yeah.
And the lion is, I guess, just sitting there. But that's the other thing is like the consistency of everybody being turned to stone is very off. Like some people are in action poses, and
some
others
people are
like
reading.
one lady just reading a book. A bunch of those women are dancing in a circle, holding hands. You're like, some people were alarmed and some were not.
Maybe they were turned to stone at different points in the Gnome King taking over.
Oh, that's a good point.
You know what I mean?
A bunch of people were turned, and then the Tin Man was running around like hacking wheelers to death. Like,
I thought he was just chopping wood.
Oh
no, man! In the original books, the Tin Man was scary. Oh my god! There's a scene in, I'm not sure which book it is, but he fights a pack of wolves, and like the description of it is that he hacks them like one by one, and then after they're dead, he hacks them into tiny pieces, like just to make sure they don't come back. It's crazy. The Tin Man he was the coolest character in my childhood reading, and like also the story is like Dorothy leaves, and then when she comes back, all of her friends that she left behind, they've all been sort of like displaced, but they all are the leaders of different sections of Oz. Like they're all like different sort of like barons and kings and stuff, and like they've all got their own dominion. It's pretty cool. It's like D&D stuff, like they didn't just like stay stagnant being like, oh, we've just been waiting for you to come back, Dorothy. It's like, no, I'm the king of the woods now, and I hack wolves to death when they attack my people.
Well, as one does, as you should do.
As one does. Oh, the other thing I wanted to mention was that I did mention it briefly at the beginning. The guy who directed this movie, he was primarily an editor, but he also was a sound editor for a really long time. And I don't know if you guys noticed, but the sound editing in this movie is on the money, man. Like some of the sound effects are so cool. Every time TikTok blinks, it sounds almost like like sheep shears or something. Like, and it's like threatening, but also like you feel protected by it. And it also feels like he's thinking hard. I don't know. Do you guys have a favorite sound effect?
I did, but now that you mention it, yes, I can't remember what it was, but I will say to that the level of detail in a lot of places that didn't require detail were prevalent in this movie, and that was one of the things that the sound design was definitely great and had depth to it.
I mean, I can keep going through my notes, but if you guys have anything you want to add, just let me know.
I like when the wheeler got turned to sand.
Yeah, that was a pretty good one. I just like my favorite effect in the whole movie was the fucking just the stone moving around on the wall in Gnome's King Gnome's cave.
Gnome Mountain or whatever.
Gnome Mountain,
right.
Great Gnome Mountain or whatever the fuck. It was just such a cool effect. We were talking about it earlier a bit, but like, it goes back to how good it looks on Disney Plus, where you expect a movie like this to be visually almost unappealing. Like Krull,
like a whatever or something.
Krull. A lot of the time it's just like, ugh. There were cool scenes. There were the scenes where he's like climbing, like he's walking between two mountains, and it's clearly they somehow got a drone shot in the 80s. Somehow.
At that point, it was a helicopter. Yeah, they just had to get far enough away that it wasn't like blowing the guy off the mountain.
Shit everywhere. Yeah. But like this, I couldn't believe how good these practical effects looked, and it's really a bummer that this movie wasn't heralded for its stop motion effects.
Well, the director was fired in the middle of the movie because he was getting too stressed out and he was faltering and he wasn't believing in himself. And so the studio was like, "Well, you're fired then." And he didn't want to be fired. And the studio, like, this is how the story goes. A couple of hours later, he's like in his trailer, like losing his mind. And then George Lucas calls the studio and is like, "All right, I'll be there in a couple hours. I'll be there. I'll be there tomorrow." And then they get another call, and it's Steven Spielberg. And then they get another call, and it's Francis Ford Coppola. And they're all being like, "You can't fire this guy," because he worked on all their movies, right? And eventually, George Lucas is like, "If you have to let him have another chance, and if you don't let him have another chance, I'm going to pull all the resources that I put into this movie. And if you do give him another chance and he fails, I will step in and I will direct the rest of the movie, and you can put my name on it as a George Lucas directed movie."
There's some alternate paths this movie could have taken. It could have been none of these people come to bat for this guy. It is a total failure and a flop, and it's worse than this movie is. This movie's fine. Like, for all intents and purposes, as a kid's horror movie, it's great. You know what I mean? Like, it does the job. Boom. The director did a great job. There's a version of this movie that's directed by George Lucas, and it's an absolute banger. It's a Disney movie that gets put back in the vault every 10 years or whatever they used to do in the 90s. You know, it's here for one Christmas only, and then it goes back into the Disney vault. And then there's a version of it where somehow Steven Spielberg just takes over, and it's an Oscar winner.
Well, I don't think that Francis Ford Coppola and Steven Spielberg put that same deal on the table.
No,
but
I know.
They were there to be like, no,
there's
he can do it.
There's a version where Francis Ford Coppola takes over, and it's a gritty indie flick.
But the thing is like this movie is well directed, and it's well edited, and it's coherent, and it all makes sense, and everything kind of fits together properly in the sense of the story, and you're not left being like confused or wondering or thinking that it could be better. Like, I think it's just like, it's good for exactly what it is meant to be.
Somebody going on an adventure, and it has the spirit of the original movie. You know, she meets characters as she goes, and she's got different conflicts as she goes, and
only the spirit is because the other one died, and it's a ghost.
And meets a literal like final boss king who has a bunch of stipulations, instead of it being like, "Don't look behind the curtain." It's like,
well, that whole it isn't that. Well, I mean, that's sort of the lesson behind the original Wizard of Oz, right? Is that like sometimes things can seem scary and complicated, but really it's just something. Sheet. It's just like an uncomplicated, pathetic thing behind a curtain that's so frightening.
But this one was Jigsaw and the Saw movies.
Yeah, I think I've said it enough already. No, this movie's about maintaining your imagination and not letting everybody fucking destroy it. Let's move on to
the
Mombi.
other ornaments. Other people, maybe not like Oz people, but like
it's heavily implied, I think, that the people, like when a vase got smashed in that room, it was a person getting smashed to smithereens.
Like all those people at the end that are in the throne room or whatever, those are all ornaments. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I don't know if that's true, but all the green ones maybe. Like imagine she went around and figured out the green clue and then like just kept pulling up like weird random character, like one of those crab trees from the first one, being like, "Get away from my apples!"
It's the same as the Beauty and the Beast implication, where you know everything in that castle was people, and Beast goes into a room and smashes it like a whole room up, and it's like he just killed half of his castle. Like people,
and when everybody comes back to life, there's just like a massacred room.
Yeah, there's just
corpses.
There's a red wedding room.
Yeah. For who could ever love a beast? Ding, 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 and it goes up to the attic, and there's just blood everywhere, like limbs.
We don't go into that room anymore.
Yeah, that's why can't we go into the West Wing? It's forbidden.
We need a shovel to clean it.
Smells bad.
Yeah. Smells like pestilence.
Okay, let's move on to Mombi. They get to Mombi's tower, and they let go the Wheeler guy. The Wheelers don't really. They come back one more shot later when they're escaping from the tower, and they all fall into the desert and turn into sand, which is also a really cool effect. Where it's like they almost immediately are like, and then it shows that one guy's face and it just like cracks, and you're like, oh!
It looked awesome. Yeah, that was awesome.
That freaked me out as a kid because I was like, he's dead. Why? He's dead now, right? He turned to sand? And my mom was like, no, he's just
sleeping.
Yeah. Mombi's dress is wild.
Yeah.
Also, the mirror room is wild, which is the same room. I think like later in the movie, you realize that she's sort of annexed the palace, the main palace of Oz, right? Like because they all fill into that same room, the mirror room, and but now she just has it like a throne in the center of it in her bed. She's turned it into like a studio apartment, basically, where it's like all one open concept. She's like, I got my heads over there, my bed over there, and my throne room here, and that's all I fucking need, bro.
I like the way they like artistically got around the fact of not seeing the camera in the mirror by doing like an up and over shot.
I didn't even think about that. How hard it would be to shoot in that room so that you don't see the mirrors or the camera crew in every mirror.
You basically just have to like superimpose what's on the mirror onto the mirror.
Or just like Kaylin was saying, like get creative with your angles.
Yeah.
It would be like a thing where they would have to do it, and like people would like a whole army of people would have to be like moving with the camera to get it out of the way. The heads in the book, the original book, they all have different personalities. So like when she puts a head on, it's meant to be like a different person almost, but they all have sort of the same goal, I guess.
I'm feeling silly today. Fuck you, I'm feeling like shit today.
But it's almost like when one of them puts it on, she like is like, this girl might be of like, we might want to have her head later, but I don't want to be the one to deal with it, so I'm gonna go change heads. And then they get the other head, and the other head's like, I'm gonna lock you in the tower now, motherfucker.
Did she lock her in the tower to like age up to the age, at least age appropriate to behead?
Yeah,
to cut her head off. Yeah.
To cut her head off, like because she would look ridiculous with a tiny 10-year-old
tiny head,
head on her shoulders. Yeah. But all of the other women in the Hall of Heads were all like fair maiden, probably 18-year-olds. And then
they were like the dancing women and more, because there's way more than this.
And she's the head nurse from the ward, right?
Yeah. That's why they called her the head nurse.
Right.
And like Annie Ann was like head nurse. And she went like this.
So it stands to reason that it stems from the character being super like vain about her age, and she wants the youngest of the young. And that's why Dorothy is like the the perfect person to like age up into that. It's too bad that
She has an interesting face that will go on to star in The Craft.
Yeah.
Yeah, not beautiful, you understand, but there is a certain prettiness there.
Unique.
You're weird looking, but
You're weird looking, but you're gonna be desirable from the.
but you're
male
90s
gaze.
hot. Yeah.
Yeah. And we're hitting the 90s extremely hard over here.
I think that whole thing, like, kind of, I know that it was created for the books and everything, so it's not like new, but it felt sort of like Guillermo del Toro storybook style stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
Like where it's like, this is what del Toro does with his kids' stories now, where he's like, I'm gonna make them sufficiently dark enough, which is why I like take my hat off to him like every time I think about it when he makes something that's meant to be for kids, because he's like, I know how to push it to darkness that is the 1985 level of darkness without it being too much.
Pan's Labyrinth is absolutely a family movie with horror visuals at times.
That is not a kid's movie.
I haven't seen it in a long time.
Oh, there's a part where he grabs a guy with a face and caves his whole face in with a wine
Didn't
bottle.
we do it?
Never mind, I forgot about the part with the wine bottle.
No, I'm talking more like the recent stop frame animation movie Pinocchio.
Yeah.
Like, that's more.
I saw
on the level
stills
I'm
from
talking.
Pinocchio and I was like, that looks like a cool anime. It's
It's
on my
good.
radar to watch. I just haven't got around
You should
to
watch it.
On
Sorry,
Netty.
Kaylin, what did you say, Kaylin?
Oh, what was I saying?
Uh-oh.
Something about spookiness. I can't remember now.
Spooky.
My apologies. Take it away.
Spooky
Okay,
freak.
okay. Well, she gets
Be
locked in the
spooky.
tower. Yeah, she gets locked in the tower and she meets Jack, the Jack Pumpkinhead. And he is sort of like the Scarecrow, but he's more anxious, I think, than the Scarecrow. The Scarecrow was more just like a doofus, right?
Oh, I
Where
have
he's
no
like,
brain.
I don't understand why I'm not smart. I mean, I was not born with a brain. He's like, oh, and he's like pulling his straw out everywhere. Like, oh, and he can't walk.
Yeah, I
properly.
think
Whereas
Jack's,
Jack is like, I have emotional issues.
yeah, he's
My
got no
mom
no
abandoned
confidence. He's a millennial. he's
Yeah.
he's an elder millennial out of time somehow. He's anxious.
Do you mind if I call you
He's
mom?
he's
'Cause
neurotic.
I don't even know who my mom is.
I don't. You kind of look like who my mom was, I think, but I don't really remember who my mom was. I just know that I called somebody mom who was young, who made me, and to put me somewhere.
Yeah. So in the books, the magnificent land of Oz is the main character is named Tip, and he's a boy.
Tit.
And Tip with a P.
I know that is something that when I was looking, they made comic books about
Yes.
Tip, and he's with the Tin Man.
Yeah. So he goes through his own sort of adventures in Oz, but at the end of the movie, he comes to the realization that he is not Tip. He's actually Ozma, who's been transformed into a boy to save him from Mom Bee. And and then he comes to the realization that like he's actually Ozma, and he's like, I don't want to turn back into Ozma. I want to stay as Tip, because if I turn into Ozma, then people won't see me the same way anymore. And there's like this whole moment in the book where like he becomes Ozma, and everybody like is just like, no, we'll still like you even if you're Ozma. And he's like, I'm still Tip though. And they're like, yeah, we still think you're Tip, but you're also Ozma now. That's fine. And it's kind of like a weird sort of like 100-year ago like transgender story, which is kind of cool and interesting. And I think they did a bit of a take on it in the Marvel comics that came out in like the late 90s and early 2000s.
This might be a controversial thing
I'll be
to
right back.
say,
Keep going.
but like 100 years ago, did people know what it meant to be? What it
meant to be trans?
Well, would people know inside their selves that it would be possible to be a different gender than they were born as?
Yeah, so through
100 years ago, was that concept even like...
So through many different cultures, not just Western culture as we know it, but through all cultures across the world, that has been a thing that has existed since the beginning of time. Like,
right.
It's not a new,
yeah,
it's
no,
not a new
okay, that's a
concept.
good point. That's a good point because of like in the like Roman times, gender was basically non-existent. Everybody was just...
But also in certain Asian cultures and South Asian cultures, and like there are like genderless terms that have existed for thousands of years because people have been like,
Smaller scale though, 100 years in Western culture. There were probably some very small underground movements of.
I don't know enough about it to talk about it, but I do know that it existed. It just wasn't called the same stuff that we call it now.
Do you know what I mean though? Like how there's kind of there would be a disconnect between 100 years ago and 1,000 years ago, where culturally like it just existed.
Yes.
And 100 years ago, it was very much like religious oppression of any idea that you had that goes against any sort of the norm. Like, the transgender politics are very fascinating to me because it all seems very new, but it all seems very like it would have existed the way that gay people have existed forever and knew that they were gay, and it has existed forever. It's just the terminology is different now, right, and it's changing, and it like in terms of like give me an example of a group of people. It's like you can find it for sure, and it did exist, and some of it is probably not as accessible as it should be, but yeah, it definitely has always existed. It's not a new concept. It's just the language that we use now is different. Yeah. Anyway, it's interesting. It's a very fascinating. It's very fascinating stuff to me. I'm trying to get as much education on it as possible because it doesn't seem that ridiculous to.
Well, maybe we should just get somebody on the show one day to talk about this stuff instead of me having to talk about it. Because I'm like, I know enough to tell you guys, but I'm like, I don't know enough if I'm saying all the right things.
We need one of each.
I had a good little chuckle at how scared the gnomes were of chickens.
Yeah,
because that
shit
makes
poison
sense.
into your body.
So that's something that I wanted to bring up that I noticed at the very beginning. He's like, I hate chickens, and then at the end, a chicken shits an egg.
He doesn't just say I hate chickens. He says chicken. He's like terrified of the fact
it's not
that chicken there.
It's not that far fetched. Now that we've talked about it, now that I think about it, because even when that happened, when the egg, I've seen the movie a bunch of times. When the egg falls in the mouth, I've always been like. Because at the beginning he's like, I hate chickens, because he knows obviously, because when he's like, eggs kill gnomes, eggs are poison to gnomes, and it seems like today when I was watching, I was like, that's weird. When you think about it,
behind that,
there's no lore behind it. I looked it up, and gnomes aren't even really a thing. They're
they're not even spelled the same way that you would spell it in
it's not like
other fantasy.
They got rid of the G. Why not put in the G to help teach kids how to spell gnome?
These are
because they're not gnomes.
They're a different
monsters. Kind of gnome.
Yeah. Gnomes are smaller than dwarves. They're small elves, and they've usually got like a.
You put them on your lawn.
You can put them on their lawn. They either have the tall hats, or they got like a small close.
Though in the original story, they were not stone creatures.
Oh, they were literally gnomes?
They were like gnomes. Yeah.
So this was just like artistic license.
Yeah. And thank goodness they did it because it looks fucking sick. And imagine how dumb it would be if like it was like,
I know, we gotta find your chicken.
Well, in the books are the gnomes and the munchkins like at a 100-year war.
That's another thing. The munchkins are created by MGM.
Oh, so the munchkins are the gnomes from the books then, in that case, probably.
Yeah.
There are no munchkins in this. There are no munchkins in the Sam Raimi movie.
There are munchkins in this.
Well, I mean, there are little people that show up at the end, but they're not like, welcome to Munchkin Land.
Lollipop killed.
Why are they...
ableist of you, Jason, to just assume that they're munchkins. What's wrong?
They're in Oz, Steve. Come on.
They have to be called munchkins.
If they were in a place that was not called Oz, then I'm being ableist. But
no, you're right. They definitely threw a couple little people in there.
There were three
to make it seem like they had munchkins.
Three little people. There were three.
But yeah, no, munchkins are like a bunch of things that MGM owns. Even the makeup of the Wicked Witch of the West, the specific green that they painted her, is like
it's copywritten.
So iconic. Oh yeah, copywritten. Yeah,
it's such an iconic look. Like, I mean that icon and iconography.
Also, TikTok is Admiral Akbar from Star Wars.
Like his voice.
It's a trap.
You're saying was that a Steve theory corner?
No, if you look on IMDb, TikTok has 3 credits.
Oh,
Like
okay.
3 different people play him. One of them is the guy who got stuffed his whole neck into his dick to play it, and then one of them is the voice, and the other one I guess is like operating the arms. I don't know, but I assume it's the voice. If it's not the voice, they sound similar.
It's true.
Come on, it's a trap, and
the voice of
I'm the trap now.
the voice of TikTok was very unique. He was like an admiral, but also a robot. In the way that
he's the entire army of Oz in one man.
The way they did the robot voice wasn't just like I am a robot, but it also kind of was. Which
it was, but it wasn't. Yeah,
I loved listening to.
He's also so smart. He's like the smartest character in the fucking
person.
movie. His move at the end of the movie made me be like if I was a DM running a game and like someone did that, I'd be like,
Dungeon Master,
you're
folks.
so fucking smart. Like that's such a good idea. If you're a robot and you go into a room and you use up 2 guesses and you have 1 left, why not pretend to be like, Mwah. And then when Dorothy comes in,
for when Jack goes in with Belina in his head, what I thought was going to happen was he would turn to stone, but Belina would see everything and not be stone, and then tell her what he touched, so that she could like,
good.
Right.
But you get turned into an ornament. He got turned into a vase. So,
into an ornament. I mean, yes.
Imagine he got turned into an ornament, and then she got crushed and her head fell off.
What's even more horrifying is what Kaylin's saying. And if he got turned into a statue, now you just have a stone version of Jack with a fucking live Belina stuck.
Chicken and trapped inside, yeah.
In a jack-o'-lantern cage, which is a pretty cool visual in my opinion. Because there was a point at the very end where Belina's popping her head at the top of the jack-o'-lantern, and I was like, that's a cool, like, I like the character. I've always liked the Jack character, and I've always liked the Belina character, but like the Jack inside Belina, the Belina inside Jack, like
Jackalina.
Yeah,
a chicken and a pumpkin. Yeah, you get it.
It is cool. Good. It's cool. It's fun. It's funny.
But it's also like one of those things where I don't know how they knew to hide her in there. I think she went in there because she was scared, and then she just stayed in there.
Yeah.
But I like. Do you recall a moment where they're going into his lair where they're yelling about chickens? But I mean, they're yelling about chickens the whole time. So
no, I think it was before they get. It was so.
The chicken is the fucking Chekhov's gun in this whole
Chekhov's smoking chicken.
I'm gonna name a restaurant that.
They're like laying down that smoking chicken booty since the beginning of the movie, right? Like where she's
Belina, if you don't lay an egg, Ami's gonna stew you up and stir fry tonight. Oh,
we live in a dust bowl situation right now. You have to lay eggs, or we're gonna turn you into chicken. Also, my uncle will not build this house. He should build it. I hope
he's depressed.
I hope I don't fall in a swamp and bring back.
There is one little line.
Finish the house.
There's one little line where Dorothy is like, "He broke his leg, Annie-M," and Annie-M's like, "His leg has been healed for a long time, Dorothy."
Mended.
And
she
he's
puts
just like
emphasis on mended.
And you're like, he's depressed. Like he is like mega
depressed.
depressed.
Under his fucking blanket, looking off into the distance.
He's sad. He's so sad. His house got destroyed that he built, and he's trying to build another one, and he broke his leg, and his niece is insane.
You don't jack it when you're
lost
sad?
her fucking marbles.
I don't believe that for a second.
Were any of you guys worried when Jack's head fell off the side of the couch or Gump, I guess?
Wait, guys, we're not there yet. We gotta go through the whole dusty cocaine moment where she goes down to.
It's also been 2 hours.
I know that, but we're not going fast enough, and I haven't talked about my favorite part of the movie yet.
Okay.
Which is when they steal the dust from the head, and she almost gets bitten by the head, which is the head of the head nurse, which we talked about already.
Is 48 minutes into the movie, so just as an FY.
Okay, my favorite part is when she sprinkles it on the couch that they've pushed together and tied all of this bullshit onto with the Gump head, and she says, "Weog, Tiog, Piog," and then he goes, "Piog." Like he wakes up like, "Piog? Hold on, who the hell said Piog?"
It's Chucky.
It kind of sounded like he was hungry, like it was something to eat.
Piog?
Like, what? You got Piog?
You got Piog here? Yeah.
It's
But the
it's a
reason
real
that
chunky moment.
Like, I laughed out loud, and the reason that I thought it was so funny is because usually in moments like that in a movie, she's reading it incorrectly, right? If you were to read it properly, it wouldn't work, and then she would have to read it correctly, and then it would work. But like, you're expecting it not to work, and it works on the first try, and it's funny. It's fucking funny. Funnier still because it's a very deep voice of a man going, "Peog, hold on, Peog, who's got Peog?" Jack Pumpkin is sad. Good character design on that. His head movements when he gets scared and it like elongates.
The whole Jack character has such a unique, interesting look to him. His head his head is like a big wobbly pumpkin with like points of articulation.
Yeah, it was supposed to be more like the Gump head. It was supposed to have way more articulation, but after the firing of the director and all that shit, they we're over budget, and so Lucas came in and was like, okay, we'll pull some stuff back, and he like helped with the design of the pumpkin. We'll be like, we can still get emotion from it, but it won't be as
make it a bit
articulate.
Wobbly.
But then you think about like how weird it would be if the lips were moving and shit. It would probably look horrifying.
Well, do you know what it would look like? It would look like the parts where the scarecrow fucking smiles.
But he's just smiling the whole time. Like his whole face,
but his mouth moves. I swear.
It moves like this, like.
But it means that it can go and they can curve it a bit. That scarecrow has lived in infamy in my head for
I do remember the first time I ever saw that. Yeah, and it was like when she slides down that thing, and then he's like,
"What is
Dorothy?
What is wrong
You're like,
with the scarecrow?
What happened to your face?"
It looks like an action figure parody.
But like even the scarecrow from the original was weird looking too. If you watch it now, it's like they connect the rubber to like the face, and it's like
a guy's face.
Gross and.
It's a guy's face. He at worst looks a little bit melted.
He's got one of those baklavas, not baklava. What's that?
Balaclava.
Yeah.
Baklava is a pastry.
It's a delicious Greek pastry. A balaclava is a delicious Russian face mask.
Made of cotton.
Cotton.
Where you get to smell your own breath all winter long.
Unless it has a zipper. They can open.
I think that's for a different.
Anyway, he yells "Peog," and then they run out of the room while headless lady is putting her head on, and she then starts to do a scary voice for the rest of the movie, which is pretty cool.
Oh, wait! Right before they're getting Gump all together, one of my like kind of favorite little interactions or lines, or whatever, is when. So she comes back to them, TikTok and Gump and TikTok, Jack and Belina making Gump, and TikTok's like wisdom has run out and he's just talking gibberish.
And he's thinking,
he was thinking, and she's like, his brains must have run down, and then I think it was Jack was like, but he's talking. How can his brains run down? It's like, oh, people do it all the time. It was like,
yeah.
She just said people talk shit all the time. And it's true.
Yeah, that's also like a line from the original movie, which is like Dorothy meets the Scarecrow, and he's like, "Oh, I haven't got a brain." She's like, "Well, how do you have a brain and be able to talk?" And he's like, "Well, I've met plenty of people who talk a lot of stuff, and they don't seem to have brains either. It happens all the time." So just like, basically what they're saying is there are so many idiots who just, Tucker Carlson, for example. That guy has no brain. Right? He's basically a scarecrow.
It's true. He's the ultimate scarecrow. Tucker Carlson is the worst newscaster. I'm using finger quotations extremely hard.
I'm blasting my fingers right now.
He's the worst. But he's the reason why Fox News has to have a disclaimer that they're like entertainment. Because it's all fucking satire. It's all like a reverse satire that's just like confused people into thinking it's real, but they've built a political platform off of it. It's not great. But he's literally the Scarecrow. He's a little bit Jack, but Jack is like a neurotic comedian from the 80s.
Larry David?
Yeah, a little.
No,
No.
Larry
a little bit
David is
more,
way too more F-bomb up like a Jason.
Yeah.
Like he's willing to drop the F-bomb at any moment.
Who what's that guy that banged his daughter?
Woody Allen.
Woody Allen. He's a little bit more Woody Allen.
Jesus Christ.
I'll say it, okay?
Who's that guy who
Kids movie.
banged his daughter?
We're
No.
keeping people canceled here on this podcast. J.K.
Yeah.
Rowling, you can get out.
Get out of here.
I will play that game if it's free, though. I'm going to pirate it from the internet. I'm going to steal it.
So
Oh, can you mod PS5s?
No, it's on PC.
that's really fun. Tracks.
So,
Um,
that was the shortest, off tracks and tracks I think we've ever done.
Caught it quick.
Oh, that would be another good clip. Is like tracks, and we could be like have a train noise play. Sorry.
It would have to be
Tracks.
more of a sound effect, but yeah.
Chugga 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 chugga.
So,
It's longer
Galen, you
than
were
the
saying when
fucking
his head falls off, that was one of those moments where I'm like unnecessary. But then
I
everyone
got
falls.
worried. It was gonna fall in the sand.
Right. Well, I mean that's
I thought
good
they
because
were
you had never
close to the
seen it
sand.
before,
I thought they
right?
were close.
I've seen it 1 billion times, so I knew that nothing poor was going to happen. So I guess that's good that if you felt worried, because you just met Jack, you never know, he could get turned into sand. But going right off of that into the next part is when they all land on the edge of the Gnome King's mountain, and I gotta say, there are moments in movies where people land and you don't feel the impact, or you can tell that it's happening off screen, they're landing, but every single one of their landings has such a great poof of smoke and heaviness to it, even TikTok and Jack when the pumpkin lands and his thing flies off, all of them have a very good feeling of gravity.
There's another moment like that too that happens shortly after this where Dorothy wanders into the Gnome King's lair, and then he's like, "I brought your friends as well," and pulls them, and they just come in as pure chaos. And
it looks like something from Hellraiser when they're
and then at the
delighting
very end, they clearly made a Jack. I keep wanting to call him Jack Skellington. They keep making a Jack the Ripper because that's his canonical name now. Because that's just where my head went.
He loves going to the strip club.
After Jack gets picked up and almost eaten, he's just dropped, and they clearly made a Jack mannequin puppet thing because of the way that it falls, and they probably used it in the scene that you're talking about and the scene that I'm talking about, and it's just a Jack that's just...
There's scenes where it's a puppet, and then there's scenes where it's a person,
Yeah, that's what I mean, yeah.
But it was... I mean, you can see it when you see it, but...
Because he folds over backwards?
It doesn't stand out in a bad way to me, though, you know what I mean?
No,
it's not... I think you
not.
said earlier, it's not jarring, right?
Yeah.
No, but I think it's played more for the actual effect that it's trying to give, falling. When Gump explodes midair like a fucking airplane, and they all just come crashing to Earth, or when.
But also, it helps that they have a 10-year-old girl as the only primary human on screen at times, because you can cast even a semi-tall man, and it's gonna look like they're a giant next to her because she's so small, right? So this is when we get into the main thick of everything, right? Which is the Gnome King's address to the group, and it again unsettling. This whole moment is unsettling, but it's odd because he's not being particularly cruel to them. He's just setting forth rules to their engagement, and I don't know. I think it's really good, and I looked at the time code of it, and it's almost half an hour of him talking to her while her friends are going in one by one and slowly being turned into.
The movies have a Home Alone of it, but sometimes movies have I don't know what to really say. I don't have a term for it.
Intermission?
No, not an intermission. But
This is the part in Home Alone when the wet bandits figure out the traps and catch Kevin.
Yeah,
ding, and they put him on that hook.
Sometimes
on the hook on the wall.
In professional wrestling, what I call it is the long match. A lot of wrestling shows will have have different matches that do different things. They'll have like a quick, snappy one with a weird fit with a weird ending. They'll have like a like a women's match and a hardcore match and like a couple title matches.
Cage match.
A cage match. But sometimes they'll have what I call the long match. And the long match is a wrestling match. It could be a singles or it could be one of the matches I already said. But it's just like long, and there's a lot of endings to the match that actually make the match continue because the people in the match are so good at wrestling that you have to keep this tension building and building. And that's what this scene does. This scene is called the Wednesday night. Hey, did you see this one? The long match. It's a new. Right. That's a new thing I've been introducing to the show. The long match.
Okay. The long match.
Ding, 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 ladies and gentlemen.
The Gnome King explaining what's going on.
Yeah.
When they're flexing their skills or whatever.
Yeah.
He has like a long monologue before she even gets into that room, which is interesting.
He looks very pretty in those slippers. I'll give him that.
I do like that too.
That was very fun. The reveal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He pulls up his like robes a little bit.
But then she grabs for them, and he like there's like a weird like the frame is sped up and they're like covered again so fast.
But they like go in and like it's almost like it's a reverse or something. Like they reversed it because they like the thing like closes and they like. It's like no. They're my ruby slippers.
She never gets them. She never gets the ruby slippers.
She does.
At the end?
Yes.
Yeah.
I couldn't.
Out of the
There's
rubble.
too much ballyhoo and fanfare.
That's how she wishes everybody back to life from being
get to
dead.
the credits.
I like the ruby slippers. I do like the conversation that he has, and I like his reasoning almost. Like, I wish to know if he went to the Emerald City and asked for all the emeralds back first. You know, was he like, listen, I want my emeralds back. You guys just took them all. Like, they're mine. And if the Scarecrow was like, fuck you! Get out of here!
Is King Gnome the Killmonger of this universe?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Where he kind of has a point? Like, that's
he does have a point. They robbed him of his guts.
But also he infers that he like makes all the other gnomes like collect all the rubies and emeralds and gems for him, so he's not a good guy.
About Killmonger, of course, where he has little divots on his body for each time he's murdered a person.
Yeah, you have to have a reason to not like them.
And his body is covered from neck to tip to taint from little dibs of people he's killed. It's kind of like that
self-mutilation.
Yeah, exactly. Well, they're not self-mutilation. They're scarification. It's like Zaz in Batman. He's the same character basically.
I'll tell you what I didn't like. I didn't like Dorothy taking on the mentality of the United States, saying, "Well, you know, we're here with our army to conquer you, and we'll force you to give it back."
I mean, that's like every conquering nation, not just the United States. Like every.
I mean, that's true. Yeah, but
like the United States is pretty like that's what we do.
Yeah. Also, the original Wizard of Oz was created as a way to make people forget about World War II that was happening during the filming of that movie,
and had just gotten over World War I. Like World War I was so. It's crazy that the Great War and World War II were so close together, and then after that, there's wars. But like the two biggest wars were within like 20 years, 20-year span.
I do like the puzzle. I think it's cool. I think it's fun. I think that going in there and not knowing that you need to pick a green thing is interesting. It's also like a thing that you could feasibly figure out as a child, which I like as well. Because like you know that everything in Oz is like the main color of Oz is green.
Yeah,
emerald. Going in there, there's green highlights to a ton of things, but there are only a few objects that are completely solidly green. And that's a fun puzzle, and it's not impossible to solve, and I think the Gnome King made his puzzle fair. I don't think that he was making it impossible, you know? It's like the Indiana Jones, the goblet, or whatever, not the goblet, the Holy Grail, where it's like, choose from these cups of the cup of Jesus or whatever, and like Indiana Jones is the only one to be like, now that is the cup of a cobbler or whatever, or not a cobbler, a carpenter.
Carpenter.
Yeah.
Amba Jones.
Imagine Jesus was a cobbler, just fixing shoes.
Making sandals.
You guys know
washing people's feet.
Sandals.
You guys know how I hate trailers. I've seen the Amba
that you live in.
No, like the movie trailers. I've seen the Amba Jones trailer for MB4.
Yeah,
it's like 5 times now.
5.
Yeah, and I'm hyped for that movie, even though I've never seen Crystal Skull.
I thought you hate trailers.
I hate them. They showed me an extended Guardians trailer, and I was even more angry about when they showed me a Quantumania trailer before Wakanda. Because that movie looks awesome. I'm excited for Guardians.
Cool. 3. So you know what was really awesome is when she goes in and TikTok is fake Frozen.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
Kalen's just.
Well, I'm back.
You know what's even better is that TikTok sheds a little tear, which means that thing on the back of his back? No. Untrue. He is alive. He feels feelings. The whole movie is like, I cannot feel emotions. I am the Army of Oz. And then he cries about being like, about the fact that he might not be able to see Dorothy again after she gets turned into an ornament.
After we learn that Jack's autistic, how do we find out that he's actually not, though?
Oh, you don't, because he is. Takes one to know one is what my therapist says.
He does seem a little... He seems at least like he has Asperger's.
One of my favorite
scenes... He's neurotic and uncertain and has a lot of
anxiety,
emotional issues that are like unresolved in terms of parenthood and stuff.
He's a therapist, and he needs to stop calling little girls mommy.
That is weird. That's the weird thing, but you know what? Whatever.
He's got nothing, and he literally has no space for a brain. Like he's got space for a brain, but he doesn't have.
So when she goes in there, he has so much space for a brain. His whole thing is empty on the in there. He could fit like 10 brains inside of his pumpkin head. One of my favorite lines though is that when at this point she's in there choosing, and he's like, "I'm so happy that I'm going to be the king of empty void space or whatever after this," and then Mombi shows up, and she like, if you were to take this line out of context in any other way, it would be like she would seem insane, right? Like the craziest person ever, which is, "She stole my ruby key, my powder of life, my valuable antiques, which she then turned into a flying sofa." And then the king is like, "Shut up. Bow.
Kneel."
Yeah, kneel. Lower. And she's like lying on the ground, and he's like, "Lower."
That cracked me up. That got the biggest laugh out of me.
You know who else laughed? Him. He thought it was funny as fuck too. The gnome.
Yeah.
I'm under notes. Just
okay, I got one here. It says, "If I could remove my head, I would probably sleep better."
Jesus Christ. Thank you for that. 4 seconds.
How about that Toto the dog point of view camera angle?
Pretty good. MGM has the rights to many things, including the ruby slippers. In the books, they were silver slippers, but they were created as ruby slippers in the original movie because red pops way better than silver on screen. The only reason that they paid $1 billion to have them in this movie from MGM is because of the iconography of the original movie, and if they switched it, people wouldn't think that it was a true sequel.
You made up that number, did you?
$1 billion?
Yeah, I don't know what the actual number is, so I couldn't find it. I looked.
It was probably like $100,000 adjusted for inflation, which is like now $1 million.
The budget of this movie was $25 million, so I assume it was probably like a big sliver of that.
Yeah, a big portion of this movie was clearly the stop motion claymation stuff, because a lot of this movie was like locations that aren't that difficult to find in nature, and also it turns out it was a UK studio, so their backlots were probably just like forest that you're allowed to film in. You know what I mean? Like I want to see that path that they filmed, that they're like, this is the original Yellow Brick Road, but now it's all fucked up. I want to see that in real life, but also it's so different than the magical...
Was there an earthquake? Why was it so perfectly like
Well,
You know what I mean? Or
I think
did some sort of like snake? Oh, a tremor. Was
could
there like
be.
a
It's probably a
tremor
tremor.
following the yellow brick road?
Oh, almost like
Yellow brick
the
road?
rock people can move beneath the ground.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
I was thinking it was the
think-
rock people, to be honest. But
I think it might be a situation where time moves differently in Oz, and it's been like 50 years in Oz. It's been 6 months on Earth. It's been like 50 years in Oz.
Yeah.
Or 20 years even could do that. But it's so drastic.
That's why in Howl's Moving Castle, when she goes back again, they all have crazy airships and like.
It's so drastically different. Oh,
You guys should watch Howl's Moving Castle and just watch it as though it's like
an
official sequel
yeah.
to this, because it is pretty. You're like, wait a minute, this is just a Wizard of Oz sequel.
Ike Heldon is still here. This person has been watching pretty much this whole episode, it seems like. They read the book before they saw the original movie, and they were like,
probably the way
the
to do
shoes
it.
are silver, not red, ruby.
Yeah,
Not
silver
as it
shoes.
did. So it'd be okay to go back to silver. But
I mean, it
The
would be
old
okay
silver
for sure, but
screen, eh?
the reason that they did it is because the iconography of the original movie is so strong that they thought that it would be weird to
they
do it.
somehow put a sparkle effect in a Technicolor movie from the 1930s. That is crazy. That's crazy. When they reveal the shoe,
The Wizard of Oz is not a Technicolor movie; it's a color movie.
or a color movie, but still, my point stands. The reveal of the shoes, the same thing happens when he reveals the shoes in this movie. It's got that same like glowy tinge, sparkle.
Yeah, it's got like a sparkle where like it's there's certain
Was that
lenses.
added, or was that not just
No,
the
it's
rookies
lenses.
doing their thing?
You can use lenses to do that. You can reflect light off of stuff if you use anamorphic lenses, it causes the light to refract in a way that stretches longer across the lens.
Yeah, it's like when J.J. Abrams puts lens flare on everything. It's just
but he usually does that digitally.
It's just digitally.
That pervert.
Whoa, you can digital
What a pervert.
that shit?
Yes, you can digitally do that.
You can get on Instagram. I'm pretty sure you can get an app or a filter that just puts lens flares on everything. So.
Well, I mean, my notes mostly my last page of notes is mostly stuff that I said in the beginning. 14 Oz books. In 1985 is right around the time when they were being put back into public domain outside of what Disney owned. So that's why they did
There's
this.
14 of these books.
Yeah, but there's
Get reading.
that
But
last
it's
scene in
all
the
different,
throne room where
probably.
everyone's like dun 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 dun. Like almost all of those characters are characters from the 14 books. If you
Right.
look and know what you're looking for, you're like, oh yeah, there's the frog man, there's the lumpy dude, there's the
That's so
Glinda's
many books
in the background
that it's
fucking
almost
deep
like
throating 5.
it's almost
wands.
like like Dragonlance. You know those old like fantasy books that people would have like a whole crate filled with, like it'd be their whole shit. That's
Goosebumps?
so many books.
or
that,
like Watership Down, or like the Peter Rabbit books, or the Berenstein Bears books.
it's just
and, like,
so many. Like, well, I mean more so like do you know Dragon? Do you remember Dragonlance?
No, I came up with several other examples that I thought were comparable because I had no idea what the fuck you were talking about.
Okay, so Dragonlance is like there's this genre of fantasy novel, right?
Mhm.
It's the
Yeah.
ones where the picture on the front is usually like like a mage and a warrior fighting like a dragon, right? Like it's pretty.
And everybody has lances, all of them.
Well, Dragon.
Use your lance against it.
It's people writing down their D&D campaigns essentially.
For sure, yeah.
People writing them out, which is interesting.
Yeah,
Question mark.
Well, I mean, Oz is comparable to Narnia. It's comparable to Alice in Wonderland. It's comparable to Lord of the Rings. It's comparable to all these things that are still kind of regurgitated in pop culture today, right? Because they're literary classics. The main difference, I guess, from Oz to some of those other ones is it's not really problematic in a lot of ways, except the man who wrote it had some really bad ideology that he didn't necessarily inject into his work, which is kind of good. Like, people have analyzed all of his stuff, and it doesn't exist in the same way that it does in some of the other things.
Oh, I just looked up Dragonlance, and it's literally derived from Dungeons and Dragons.
Well, there you
So
go.
you might want to look into that as a fan of the sport.
Oh, also the exact year gap from this movie to the first movie is 46 years.
Yeah, that tracks.
I have to go to the washroom.
Well, let's
If
do our
that's
final
okay.
thoughts and go do other things. I bought here. I
No,
have,
no, let him go to the bathroom.
I have this sitting next to me. What do you think?
Let him go to the bathroom. We'll entertain the viewers. We can't see it.
It just blacks
Yeah.
out the whole sun.
You have to,
something.
you have to put it in front of your chest. No, we still can't see it. Oh, there it is.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah. What he's trying to show you, ladies and viewers, is the PS5 VR2, I believe, is what it's called.
Nope. It's called PlayStation VR 2. Caleb, this thing, oh my god. It's unlike... I had the PSVR 1, my man.
Did you open it yet?
Yeah, I played it a bunch already.
Nice.
That's
why
I
they have games for it already? I thought
there's a few games that are...
Or demos. Is it demos?
Well, there's no backwards compatibility, but there's a bunch of games that are... There's PSVR 2 versions that have come out today.
Right.
But there's also a Horizon Zero Dawn game where you climb, but then it's so fucking realistic that
shit!
You look down and it's fucked.
Oh man!
Yeah,
that's awesome.
I assume since you mentioned Spider-Man and Iron Man, have you played those on the original PSVR?
So who was it? I kind of want to say it was Aaron.
Aaron had it for a second.
For a second, right? I think Aaron introduced me to VR first, and he's like, "Yo, check this out." And I was in a scuba water cage, and I was going down to the bottom of the ocean.
Yeah.
And it was fucking crazy. And then I was hanging out with my cousin. He had the Spider-Man one.
Yeah.
So I'm fucking web slinging, and then I hit a wall in the game, and I fucking fall in real life or whatever. It was fucked up, man.
The Spider-Man one was so short, but it blew my fucking mind.
There wasn't much to it, but it was yes, yeah.
But the reason why you can't play. I was telling you guys this on the pre-show, but the reason why you can't play PSVR 1 games on it because it's a whole new thing.
Setup, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's different technology. It's bleeding edge technology, but it's kind of the same idea as when DVD came out. It was cheaper to just buy a PlayStation 3 to have a DVD player. It's just it's the same idea as the Oculus
Blu-ray
or Blu-ray, yeah. Or the PS2 then. The PS2 is the cheaper way to buy a DVD player. But it's the cheapest way to have the most cutting edge gaming, but I can't it's locked. I can't do anything else with it. I can't look at that, adult content in VR.
Jesus Christ.
Well, it's part of it.
Well, I just want to make it feel more real.
You and the missus can make adult content wherever you want.
Oh God.
I'm deleting this whole podcast. Why don't you take us home, Steve?
All right. So, that was our discussion on Return to Oz, and let us bring us now to our final thoughts. I'm just leaving a pause there because I made an audio thing I'll cut that out. Let's start with Jason, since you started us to begin with at the start of this.
I didn't write my final thoughts, but it's accidentally. I fucking had a day today, okay, guys? But what I'll say about this movie is that
Don't interrupt. I got it. My bad.
It's a film, first of all. Do you have a sting for that? Remember?
It's a film?
It's a film.
Nah, that's a film.
There's kind of an explosion at the end, but it's more like a final death knell. And
you should do the movie. You should do the movie trailer voice.
In a world.
Yeah.
We're one man. In a world. It's a film. Anyway, my point
Judges, films, and movies by car chases and explosions. Sorry, go ahead. My bad.
This film is absolutely a introduction to horror for children, and it's not even in a way that really pushes that many boundaries, especially for the era of the G to PG family movie. I enjoyed it. I always have a good time with it. It's got a lot of really interesting stuff that I think holds up, especially like the sound design, like we talked about, and that stop motion, like claymation hybrid that we see throughout the whole thing, that they clearly spent the lion's share of the no pun intended of the budget on, really holds up in a way that I wasn't expecting when I watched it a couple years ago, and then when I rewatched it today. I absolutely love this movie, but I do recognize that it has its issues. I find that these kinds of movies need to be a little bit snappier to keep my attention, and I think that Stargate had it pretty good, and I think Krull had it pretty good. But this, I don't know if it's because I've seen it so many times that I know it's going to happen, and I hadn't seen Krull, I hadn't seen Stargate. But this one, I find that there's moments, there's segments where I'm like, this could have been a little bit shorter, cut the runtime down a little bit, it's a little bit snappier. But that said, I still give it a 3.5 out of 5. I think that's a pretty good rating for a movie that probably a lot of critics gave a 1 to 2 out of 5 at the time. And if I was going to give it a nonsensical rating, I would give it a you fight your whole life to stay away from chickens, only to have one just shoot an egg down your throat after it's egg constipated for a year. And also, I agree with you, Steve. Belina, one of the greatest comedians of all time.
Our greatest living comedian.
Doesn't look like they're going anywhere too fast. What a couple of stiffs, man.
All right, Kalen, give it to us, boy.
So I'm going to preface with saying that you guys took a lot of the words off the page of my final thoughts here.
As
which
is tradition.
But makes me feel like, I must be thinking something right, I guess. But first, I'll start off with saying that had I seen this when it first, this came out right before I was born, but had I seen it in my earlier years, I would have loved it that much more. But I really, really, really enjoyed this movie. I think because it surprised me so much, it kind of cemented the fact that I enjoyed it as much as I did. Because, so what did I put here? We have, so we talked about the effects. I'll get into the part that stood out, but nothing, for the most part, nothing overly stood out. Everything was pretty smooth. Where's that? The pacing, the story was clear. Like I don't know what the right word is to use, but like there was no I was engaged the whole time, basically.
You didn't have a lull. You were just in it. The movie is snappy, man. It's like one thing to another thing to another thing the entire time. It's edited for a child to like be able to continue their engagement.
The editing, the production, the cinematography, the effects, I almost want to say flawless. I almost want to say flawless. It's the fact that this came out or was back in '85, and this is now my first time seeing it in 2023. And I did not have any issues watching it whatsoever. And also it being more child-oriented, but still had me engaged in it. So I was on the fence about what I felt, what went well. For my what went well, the first thing that came to mind was Jack Pumpkinhead. I don't know why, just the design of him, his character, I just fell in love with him, basically. The other what went well for me, though, that I was kind of battling with was the Gnome King / his henchman, I guess, and the effects of so even like just at the beginning when they just have the face on the stone, like the eyes and the mouth or whatever, and it's molding around and shit. And then as we get further and it gets into that claymation, more physical, practical effects, I was hooked. It had me. The one thing I put down for even better, there wasn't too much that I could nitpick at, but the one thing that I would say would be even better was when you do have those few green screen moments where you can clearly see the outline. And I think I would have preferred it more if they just had like a physically painted backdrop instead of a green screen or whatever, right? Yeah, they could have achieved the shot another way. So I will say that it's buy the VHS when it first came out, otherwise stream it, and I give it a trauma makes life more fun.
I'll just I just want to give a what went
I was gonna
well
say I
better.
forgot about the what went well thing, so you should do that.
Just really quickly, what went well is the whole movie. Like the whole like honestly the whole movie is great, but the even better isn't. I don't really have a critique for the even better part. I just sort of have an addendum I want to add to what I was talking about in my review and sort of the whole night. I think that this movie will always be better in my memory and in my nostalgia than it is trying to watch as an adult. And I do agree with you guys. It is snappy, but for me personally, it's not snappy enough for me to like go back and like sit and watch all the time.
He needs several.
Not Rumble in the Bronx snappy.
He needs several Ant-Men shrinking and growing in the background.
The time has passed for me for this movie.
He needs it to be in hyper rate or whatever James Cameron's hyper rate.
Even better, even better is put this in high frame rate and I'm back in. Sorry. Okay, Steve, go ahead.
I'll do this right quick. MPAA 27642.
Nice.
Cool.
Once we have the stings and I have them ready to go.
I totally forgot about the what went well thing. We did just come up with it last week, I think, right? So,
we'll make more concerted efforts to make them part of the show.
Yeah.
But
for me, what went well was the entire movie, and what could have been better is we need to get Veruca Salt back to make another return to Oz as the
But now she's 40, and it's
now she's old, and she's the witch.
Yeah.
Let's make Veruca battle Dorothy.
Yeah.
But she is Dorothy. What do you mean?
It's a battle of the Dorothys.
No, she's like
Judy Garland's been dead since like the 80s also.
No, what they should do is they should make Howl's Moving Castle into a live action movie, and they should cast her as Dorothy again, and they should just do that. Anyway, could have been better. In terms of my review, this is what I had to say. This is a worthy follow-up to the original film and adaptation of the sequential books in its series. Return to Oz finds us once again following Dorothy Gale to the land of Oz, only this time we find it in ruin, an excellent metaphor for the broken mind of a girl thought crazy by her family and medical professionals. Even though this movie holds a special place in my heart, watching it again at this point in my life, I see even more than I did as a child the importance of what the movie is saying to the audience. Imagination is something that time will attempt to destroy, and the world will erode through its many difficult realities. But imagination is the greatest export of this movie. All the characters, though lifted from the pages of the Oz books, are brought to life in a satisfying way in both personality and visual execution, quickly having you feel less wanting for the characters from the original film. I like the ambiguous nature of Oz being either an escape from reality or a result of head trauma, or maybe it's completely a real place. Who knows? Even if the movie tells you that Oz is not real, it is real to Dorothy, and that is something that is most important in the film's greatest meaning. Imagination can be silly to some people, but absolutely real to the person dreaming it up. And holding on to these dreams and creating new ones is absolutely something worth teaching to children. The movie did scare me as a kid, but not enough to scare me away because I kept going back over and over and over again. I give this movie a welcome shock to the brain, a window frame to the back of the skull, or potentially drowning to death because I'd gladly return to Oz at any point in time.
Holy shit.
Nice.
I love this movie. It's such a good movie.
Does anyone want to tell the viewers what we have in store for them next month?
I don't know. Wait. I don't know. Are we opening the book?
No, we'll surprise them.
Are we going to open the book?
The Grimoire.
I think the Grimoire's coming back, baby.
Is it the Grimoire?
Oh, I thought a Grimoire was a fucking, I thought it was like a, no, never mind. You guys are right. I'm dumb.
Grimoire's a book.
A grimoire is just a collection of information.
What's an armoire? I keep thinking of armoire.
You're thinking of what you have that right. What you were thinking of, because I saw your hand motion.
Yeah.
You were opening an armoire. A grimoire is you open so there's a little clasp sometimes. You open the clasp. Then I would say the Necronomicon is a grimoire. You know. That's
a grimoire is coming next month.
So also, I think this might have been our longest episode. Just putting that out there.
Absolutely, because
we started early and we got really into talking about this movie.
I'd like to thank I Keldon for hanging out in the chat all night. That was fun. Thank you. Tell your friends.
Come back next Wednesday
when we open the Grimoire of Familiar Killers for the third movies
for the third time.
So at Halloween time we open up the Grimoire Familiar Killers. Let me talk about our 4 favorite killers, our 4 favorite serial boys, and I decided that I don't want to do this podcast for 15 years. Well, we might, but right now I don't think
you don't want to.
I do. I don't think it's realistic we're going to. Maybe we do, though. Who knows? Let's see what happens. But I would like to get through these movies a little bit faster. So for the month of March, we're going to be talking about Chunky,
lousy
Mikey,
March weather,
JC, and
Mikey?
Freddie.
Oh, Freddie.
Fredward.
Fredward kilogram.
Fredward killing yams. I love you all. You're the host, Steve.
Right.
I'm not the host.
Yeah. What am I supposed to say again? Hey, did you guys
have
a question for me? Or did I have a question for you?
It is longer than the movie where
for Jason and for Kale. Hey, I'm talking over here. I'm the host.
Hey.
Shut your mouth, both of you. Or I'll reverse the anti-bullying laws of today.
Uh-oh.
Hey, it's me, Steve, and for Steve and Jason and Kaylin, it's me, Steve.
For Kaylin and Steve, I'm Jason.
And for Jason and Steven, I'm Kellen.
And I have a question for everybody out there and both of you. Return to Oz. Hey, did you see this one?
Hey! Did you see
Did I overstep? My bad.
You one? I was trying to say it at the same time as you.
Oh, okay, let's do it.
Hey, did you see this one?
Whoa, you guys did it perfectly that time. I think it's the perfect time to cut to credits.
Yo, play it again, Lou. That's what Casablanca, right?
No, that's from Iron Maiden.
Oh, is it? Shit. Wrong song. Seriously, though, you guys should watch Howl's Moving Castle. It is, in my opinion, an unofficial sequel to the Wizard of Oz trilogy. Or, I guess, quadrilogy.
Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to listen to Ozzy Osbourne's hit 1984 album, The Blizzard of Oz.
Whoa.
Yeah, that sounds pretty cool.